In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars twinkled like distant jewels against the velvet darkness, a council convened, a council that held the fate of countless worlds in its hands. The Galactic Council, comprised of representatives from civilizations across the galaxy, gathered in the shimmering orb of Aloria, a planet known for its breathtaking views of swirling nebulas and vibrant star clusters. The atmosphere buzzed with tension, anticipation crackling through the air like static. As the council members took their seats, a hush fell over the grand chamber. At the head of the circular table sat Chancellor Virene, a tall, luminescent being from the planet Zyrak. With skin that shimmered like liquid glass and eyes that glowed with ancient wisdom, Virene commanded respect. He glanced around at the assembled delegates, each representing their own worlds, cultures, and histories. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice echoing with authority, "we gather today to discuss a pressing matter: the classification of the planet known to its inhabitants as Earth." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, and a delegate from the crystalline planet of Quisara raised a hand. "We have heard the reports, Chancellor. The disturbances originating from that world have escalated alarmingly." "Indeed," Virene replied, nodding gravely. "Earth has been a source of concern for many cycles. The turmoil among its inhabitants has grown exponentially. We must decide if it warrants a reclassification." A holographic projection flickered to life above the table, displaying scenes from Earth: chaotic protests in sprawling cities, natural disasters, and technological catastrophes. Images of humanity's darkest moments: a pandemic that ravaged populations, wars that tore nations apart, and environmental devastation that seemed to stretch endlessly, painted a grim picture. "Fascinating, isn't it?" interjected Taran, a four-armed delegate from the aquatic planet of Othera. "How a world teeming with potential has spiraled into such chaos. What do you propose, Chancellor?" "We must assess the implications of their actions, not only for themselves but for the broader galaxy," Virene replied. "If their descent into chaos continues unchecked, it may pose a risk to interstellar stability. We could find ourselves facing repercussions from their nightmares." Another delegate, Alan, a stoic representative from the warlike planet of Drakthar, leaned forward, his deep voice reverberating through the chamber. "Are we to cast judgment on a world that has only just begun to awaken to its own potential? They are but infants in the grand scope of existence." "Infants, yes, but dangerous ones," Taran countered. "Their technological advancements are impressive, yet they wield them recklessly. The recent attempts to harness the energy of their own sun could lead to catastrophic consequences. They are tampering with forces they do not fully comprehend." Alan folded his arms, frowning. "We cannot stifle their growth. To classify them as a planet of nightmares is to doom them to isolation. They deserve guidance, not condemnation." "Perhaps they need a different kind of intervention," suggested Lyra, a soft-spoken delegate from the forested planet of Thelania. "What if we sent an envoy, someone to offer them counsel and wisdom before we finalize our decision?" A ripple of interest sparked through the council. Virene tapped a finger against the table, deep in thought. "An envoy could be beneficial, but who among us is willing to traverse the void to reach Earth? Their society is unpredictable at best. The envoy must be resilient, adaptable." "I volunteer," a voice interjected, rising above the murmur of discussions. The council turned to find Elysia, a young yet seasoned diplomat from the light-sculpted world of Alarian. Her luminescent form shimmered with determination. "I have spent time observing their culture. I believe I can communicate with them effectively." Virene regarded her with keen interest. "You are aware of the risks involved?" "More than anyone else here," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "But if we simply classify them and turn our backs, we may lose the opportunity to help them find their way. They need guidance, not judgment." The council debated, weighing the merits of Elysia's proposal. Finally, Virene raised a hand, calling for silence. "Very well. Elysia, you will act as our envoy. You will journey to Earth and assess the situation. Gather information, and if possible, attempt to guide their leaders toward a more sustainable path. If your efforts yield no change, we will reconvene to discuss the reclassification. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Elijah nodded. I will not fail you. As the meeting adjourned, she stepped outside the council chamber into the golden sunlight of Eloria. The air shimmered around her, infused with a sense of purpose. Elijah had always felt a connection to Earth, even from a distance. The stories she'd heard of their triumphs and tragedies filled her with a desire to help, to bridge the chasm between their world and the Council's expectations. The journey to Earth was a surreal experience. As Elijah traversed the swirling vortex of the interstellar jump gates, a kaleidoscope of colors enveloped her, each hue representing a different aspect of the universe: life, death, hope, despair, until finally, she was thrust out into the familiar yet foreign space surrounding Earth. As she neared the planet, a panorama of blues and greens unfolded before her. Oceans glistened under the sun, while landmasses rose like ancient giants from the depths of the sea. Yet, as she descended, the reality of Earth's struggles became evident. She landed in a secluded forest, the sounds of nature muffled by the distant echoes of civilization. Elijah took a moment to center herself, drawing on her light to attune with the planet's energy. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of unrest emanating from the cities beyond the trees. Determined, she began her journey toward the nearest urban center, her heart heavy with the knowledge of the challenges that lay ahead. As she emerged from the forest, the city of New Haven spread out before her, a sprawling metropolis filled with towering buildings, crowded streets, and the cacophony of human life. Elijah marveled at the diversity of humanity, their struggles and dreams woven together in a tapestry of existence. But as she moved through the streets, the signs of despair became increasingly evident. Protests erupted around her, voices raised in anger against a system they felt had betrayed them. She witnessed the consequences of environmental decay: wilted trees lining the streets, polluted rivers flowing sluggishly, and the palpable anxiety that hung in the air like a thick fog. "Hey, you look lost." A young woman approached Elijah, her eyes bright with curiosity. "You're not from around here, are you?" Elijah smiled, recognizing the warmth of human connection. "I'm here to help. I come from far away, seeking to understand what troubles your world." The woman's expression shifted, skepticism creeping in. "What can you do? You're just one person. Our problems are too big, too deep." "Sometimes," Elijah replied gently, "one voice can ignite a change." With that, Elijah began to weave through the crowd, listening to the fears and hopes of the people. She could feel the weight of their nightmares pressing down on them, but also the flicker of resilience, a determination to rise above their struggles. She had come to offer guidance, but in those first moments, she realized that what they truly needed was someone who believed in their potential to create a brighter future. As dusk settled over New Haven, casting long shadows across the streets, Elijah took a deep breath and prepared herself. She would be their ally, a bridge between the Galactic Council and the inhabitants of Earth. Together, they would face their nightmares and, perhaps, transform them into something extraordinary. Elijah stood at the heart of New Haven, enveloped by the pulsating rhythm of urban life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, its warm hues bled into the night sky, painting the buildings in a soft orange glow. The city was alive, a cacophony of voices rising and falling like waves against the shore. Yet beneath the vibrant surface, a current of unrest surged. She moved through the crowd, her presence barely registering among the throngs of people. To them, she was just another face in the bustling metropolis. But to Elijah, each encounter was an opportunity, a chance to listen, to understand, and to weave herself into the fabric of their lives. A group of protesters marched past, chanting slogans that echoed their desperation. "Save our planet, stop the destruction." Their signs bore messages of urgency, and Elijah felt a pang of empathy for their plight. She approached the gathering, her curiosity piqued by the fire in their voices. "Can I help?" she asked a young man at the forefront, his face lit with passion and determination. He turned to her, his expression a mixture of hope and wariness. "What can you do? We're fighting against the corporations that are tearing our world apart. They don't listen to reason. I'm not from here, but I want to understand. What's at stake? Elijah replied, her eyes searching his. The young man hesitated, then nodded, the fire in his eyes dimming slightly. It's everything: our air, our water, our future. They're exploiting our resources, polluting our land, and ignoring the consequences. It feels like we're screaming into a void. Elijah felt the weight of his words. This was not just a local struggle. It was a reflection of humanity's broader fears. And what do you hope to achieve? She pressed gently. We want change, he said, his voice gaining strength. We want the government to listen, to hold these companies accountable. We want a sustainable future. Elijah smiled, sensing the potential for hope amidst the despair. Then let's make sure your voices are heard. You have a powerful message, and I believe it can resonate beyond these streets. As the protests continued, Elijah listened intently, absorbing their concerns and aspirations. They spoke of climate change, social inequality, and a desire for a better tomorrow. Each story she heard added another thread to her understanding of this world, a world teetering on the brink of chaos yet bursting with potential. The following days blurred into a whirlwind of activity. Elijah found herself drawn into the lives of the people she met. She visited community centers where activists shared strategies, attended town hall meetings where voices clashed, and sat in on workshops that taught sustainability practices. Each encounter deepened her connection to Earth, allowing her to see the intricacies of human emotion: hope, fear, frustration, and resilience. Through her growing network, Elijah met Clara, an environmental scientist whose research focused on the impacts of pollution on local ecosystems. Clara was passionate, her eyes lighting up as she spoke of her work. We have to act now. The data shows that if we don't make significant changes, we're heading toward irreversible damage. But the government isn't listening. Elijah leaned in, captivated. What if we could amplify your findings? If people understood the gravity of the situation, they might take action. Clara paused, considering. It's not just about data, it's about emotions. People need to feel the impact, not just read about it. Elijah nodded, understanding the truth of her words. Then let's tell stories. Share the personal experiences of those affected by pollution, the families struggling with illness, the children who can't play outside. Let's create a narrative that connects them to the data. With Clara's help, Elijah organized a series of community gatherings. They invited residents to share their experiences, their struggles, and their hopes. Each session was charged with emotion as stories unfolded: tales of illness, loss, and the fight for a better future. Elijah encouraged each person to speak, her presence lending an air of validation to their voices. As the gatherings continued, the momentum grew. More people began to attend, and the conversations shifted from despair to action. They discussed ways to advocate for change, strategizing how to confront the corporations and government officials who had long ignored their cries. But as the movement gained traction, so did the pushback. Elijah learned that a powerful corporation, Nexus Industries, had been at the center of the environmental crisis. With their vast resources and political connections, they sought to silence dissent, using intimidation tactics to quell the growing unrest. One evening, after a particularly fiery gathering, Elijah and Clara were leaving the community center when they noticed a black SUV idling nearby. The tension in the air was palpable, and Elijah felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you think they're watching us?" Clara whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "Possibly," Elijah replied, her instincts flaring. "We need to be cautious." They hurried down the street, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Elijah glanced over her shoulder, heart racing. The SUV had followed them a few blocks before finally pulling away, but the encounter left her unsettled. The implications of their work were becoming real, and the stakes were higher than ever. The next day, a dark cloud hung over New Haven. Elijah attended a scheduled meeting with community leaders and activists, but the energy in the room felt different, charged with apprehension. Clara arrived, her expression grim. "Did you hear?" she said, her voice tense. "They vandalized the community center last night. All our materials were destroyed, and some of the activists received threats. A wave of anger surged through Alicia, but she tempered it with resolve. We can't let them intimidate us. We must stand firm and amplify our message. The meeting convened, but the mood was somber. Activists exchanged worried glances as they discussed the vandalism. They want us to be afraid, one woman said, her voice trembling. But we can't let fear win. Alicia felt a fire ignite within her. Fear can be a powerful motivator, but what we need is hope. We must harness our anger and channel it into action. If they think they can silence us, they are mistaken. We have a message worth fighting for. Her words ignited a spark in the room. One by one, people began to voice their determination, pledging to take their fight to the next level. We will not back down, they shouted, their voices rising in unison. As the meeting concluded, Alicia felt a sense of unity wash over her. They were no longer just individuals with separate stories. They were a collective force, bound together by a common goal. In the days that followed, Alicia and Clara strategized ways to amplify their message. They reached out to local media, securing interviews that highlighted the plight of their community. Alicia spoke passionately about the importance of environmental stewardship and the urgent need for sustainable practices. The response was overwhelming. Articles began to circulate, interviews aired on local news, and social media buzzed with discussions about the movement. The hashtag #PlanetOffNightmares began to trend, capturing attention beyond New Haven. But with visibility came scrutiny. Nexus Industries retaliated, launching a smear campaign against Alicia and the activists, labeling them as radical troublemakers. Their propaganda sought to discredit the movement, painting them as misguided and dangerous. Alicia braced herself for the backlash, but she remained resolute. "Let them try," she said to Clara one evening as they reviewed the latest articles. "Every attack they make will only fuel our fire." As the movement continued to grow, the first major protest was organized. Activists from neighboring cities planned to converge on the corporate headquarters of Nexus Industries, demanding accountability. Alicia felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This would be a pivotal moment. The night before the protest, she gathered with the core organizers to finalize plans. As they shared their hopes and fears, Alicia felt a sense of camaraderie. They were united in their cause, and each person's passion fueled the collective spirit. "Tomorrow, we will show them that we will not be silenced," Alicia declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "We will stand together, not just for ourselves but for future generations. This is our moment." The day of the protest dawned clear and bright, the sun shining down on the gathered crowd. Alicia stood at the forefront, a sea of passionate faces surrounding her. They carried banners, their slogans echoing the cries for justice that had filled the city for weeks. As they marched toward the Nexus Industries headquarters, Alicia felt the energy in the air electric, alive, and filled with determination. The chant of "Save Our Planet" reverberated through the streets, a powerful chorus of voices demanding to be heard. Upon reaching the headquarters, they were met with a wall of security personnel, a fortress of authority designed to intimidate. Alicia stepped forward, her heart racing. She knew they had prepared for this moment, but the sight of the imposing figures sent a shiver down her spine. "Today, we stand united," Alicia shouted, raising her arms to rally the crowd. "We demand accountability. We demand a future worth fighting for." The crowd roared in response, their voices melding into a singular, powerful force. Alicia felt the weight of her mission settle over her, a desire to be the voice for those who had been silenced for too. The crowd surged forward, a tidal wave of determination crashing against the barriers of Nexus Industries. Alicia stood at the forefront, her heart pounding in rhythm with the chants that filled the air. "Save our planet. We won't back down." The energy was palpable, a collective roar that resonated deep within her. As they reached the corporate headquarters, Alicia could see the sleek glass facade reflecting the sunlight, an emblem of power and privilege. She knew that behind those walls lay decision-makers who had long ignored the cries of the people. The protesters formed a line, a human wall of solidarity, faces painted with resolve, eyes burning with conviction. The security guards stood firm, their expressions unreadable. Elijah stepped forward, a flicker of fear coursing through her, but she quickly quelled it. This was not the time for hesitation. "We're here to deliver a message," she called, her voice unwavering. "You cannot silence us any longer." As the chants intensified, a sense of urgency propelled Elijah forward. She raised a megaphone to her lips, channeling her inner strength. "To everyone inside this building, we are not here to cause trouble. We are here because we care about our future. We demand transparency, accountability, and action." The megaphone carried her words, sending ripples through the crowd. Activists waved their signs, their messages bold and unyielding. Elijah's heart swelled with pride as she watched the determination in their eyes. This was a moment of reckoning, a chance to confront the corporate machine that had exploited their world for far too long. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the building's entrance, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit, flanked by a cadre of executives. Elijah recognized him as Victor Graves, the CEO of Nexus Industries, a man notorious for his ruthless tactics and disregard for environmental ethics. His presence sent a shudder through the crowd. "Enough of this charade," Graves shouted, his voice cutting through the chants. "You think your protest will change anything? This is a business, not a playground for your fantasies." Elijah felt the crowd's tension rise, anger simmering just beneath the surface, but she knew they had to remain focused. "This is not a fantasy, Mr. Graves. This is our reality. We're here to demand that you take responsibility for the damage your company has caused." Graves smirked, a condescending expression that ignited the crowd's fury. "You're wasting your time. The world runs on progress, and your little protests won't stop it. We're creating jobs, and you're just a bunch of misguided idealists." Elijah's fist clenched at her sides, the fire within her burning brighter. "You're creating a future of devastation. You can't hide behind the guise of progress while you destroy the very planet we depend on. We will not allow you to ignore us any longer." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices rising in a chorus of agreement. Elijah felt the tide turning, their passion coalescing into something powerful and unstoppable. She glanced at Clara, who stood nearby, her expression fierce and resolute. They were in this together. Suddenly, Elijah noticed movement at the back of the crowd. A group of counter-protesters, clearly organized by Nexus Industries, had arrived, holding signs that read "Jobs First" and "Save the Economy." Their chants clashed with those of the environmentalists, creating an unsettling din. Elijah's heart sank. This was exactly what Graves wanted, a division among the people. She knew she had to address this head-on. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto a nearby platform, raising her megaphone again. "Everyone, please listen. This is not a battle against each other. We are all fighting for our future." The noise began to quiet, and Elijah pressed on. "We can't let them pit us against one another. The issues we face, climate change, job security, health crises, are interconnected. We need to work together, not fight amongst ourselves." A moment of silence enveloped the crowd, the tension palpable as they processed her words. Elijah's gaze scanned the faces, searching for any signs of understanding. "We all want a sustainable future, one that protects our planet and provides for our communities. It's time to unite." With a fierce determination, Elijah stepped down from the platform and made her way toward the counter-protesters. Clara watched, her eyes wide with apprehension. Elijah could feel the weight of her decision, the potential for conflict looming large. "Hey," Elijah called out to the group, her voice steady. "Can we talk?" The counter-protesters exchanged glances, surprised by her approach. One man stepped forward, his brow furrowed in suspicion. "What do you want?" "I want to understand," Elijah replied earnestly. "I want to hear your concerns. We're all worried about our future. Can we find common ground?" The man hesitated, glancing back at his companions. Elijah could see the uncertainty in their eyes. "Look, we believe in jobs. We're tired of the rhetoric. We need to put food on the table, not just talk about the environment." Elysia nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. I understand, but the reality is that without a healthy planet, there won't be jobs to sustain us. If we don't change our approach, we risk losing everything we hold dear. As the man considered her words, the crowd around them began to shift, people from both sides stepping closer, intrigued by the dialogue. What do you suggest? He asked, the challenge evident in his tone. We need to innovate, Elysia replied, her voice growing stronger. We can create jobs that are sustainable, jobs that protect our environment while boosting our economy. It's not an either-or situation. The tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by curiosity. Clara stepped forward, joining Elysia. We're working on solutions that can benefit everyone: clean energy jobs, conservation initiatives, sustainable agriculture. These aren't just dreams, they're achievable if we work together. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Elysia felt a surge of hope. Let's start a conversation, she urged, looking from one side to the other. We can create a future where everyone thrives, where economic growth doesn't come at the cost of our planet. Together, we can push for policies that benefit all of us. Slowly, hands began to reach out, environmentalists and counter-protesters alike. Elysia's heart swelled with emotion as she watched the divisions dissolve before her eyes. Conversations sparked, voices blending into a hopeful hum. Graves, watching from his elevated position, scowled, clearly frustrated by the unexpected unity forming in front of him. This is nonsense. You're being misled, he shouted, but his words fell flat against the swelling chorus of collaboration. Mr. Graves, Elysia called back, her voice steady. It's time for you to listen. We're not going away. We're demanding change, and we're doing it together. The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of energy washing over them. Elysia felt the warmth of their unity, a fire igniting within her as she realized they had turned a corner. As the protest continued, the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to collaboration. Elysia and Clara spent the next few hours facilitating discussions between the two groups, encouraging them to share ideas and solutions. The passion in the air was electric, a newfound sense of purpose binding them together. Amid the fervor, Elysia noticed a familiar face in the crowd: Nora, a local journalist who had been following their movement closely. She approached Elysia, her notepad ready. This is incredible. I've never seen anything like this, she exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. It's about time we found common ground, Elysia replied, her heart racing. This could change everything. Nora nodded, scribbling furiously. What do you want to accomplish today? What's the next step? Elysia took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to establish a coalition: environmentalists, workers, community leaders. We need a unified front to approach the government and corporations. We can't just protest. We need to propose actionable solutions. Nora's eyes lit up. A press conference? If we can get a statement from both sides, it could draw attention to your cause. Yes, Elysia exclaimed, a sense of urgency fueling her. Let's organize a press conference for tomorrow. We need to present a united front, articulate our vision for a sustainable future. As the day wound down, Elysia felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had weathered the storm, and now they stood at the brink of something transformative. But she also knew that challenges lay ahead. Graves wouldn't back down easily, and Nexus Industries would likely retaliate. The following morning, Elysia gathered with Clara, the leaders from both sides, and Nora at a local park to prepare for the press conference. They drafted a joint statement, emphasizing their shared vision for sustainability, economic growth, and environmental stewardship. As they finalized their message, Elysia felt the weight of responsibility settle upon her. This was more than just a protest. It was the beginning of a movement that could change the very fabric of their society. We need to be clear about our goals, she said, looking around at the diverse group gathered. We're not just fighting against something, we're advocating. The morning sun bathed the park in golden light, casting long shadows across the assembled group. Elysia stood at the forefront, her heart pounding in anticipation of the press conference. She glanced at Clara and the other leaders, who wore expressions of determination mixed with anxiety. Today marked a turning point, and every word they spoke would echo far beyond these grounds. As the crowd began to gather, Elijah took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. This wasn't just about her. It was about every individual who had stood up to be counted, every family affected by the environmental crisis, every voice that had been silenced for too long. Nora stepped forward, her notepad clutched tightly. "Okay, everyone, remember, we're presenting a united front. Speak from the heart, and let the passion for our cause shine through." The group nodded, some exchanging glances of encouragement. Elijah stepped aside, allowing Clara to take the lead. The scientist's face glowed with resolve as she approached the gathered media, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Thank you all for being here today," Clara began, her voice clear and strong. "We stand before you not as separate factions, but as a united coalition dedicated to securing a sustainable future for our planet and our communities." The murmurs among the journalists faded as the crowd settled into attentive silence. Elijah watched as Clara continued, her words weaving a tapestry of hope and determination. "Our message is simple. We demand accountability from corporations that prioritize profits over the well-being of our planet. We seek innovative solutions that foster economic growth while safeguarding our environment." Elijah felt a swell of pride as Clara spoke, knowing that they were capturing the essence of their struggle. She leaned in closer, ready to support when her turn came. "Today," Clara concluded, "we call on Nexus Industries and all corporations to commit to sustainable practices, to invest in renewable energy, and to support our communities in the transition to a healthier planet." As Clara stepped back, Elijah felt the weight of expectation shift onto her shoulders. She stepped forward, the eyes of the crowd focused intently on her. She could sense the diverse tapestry of faces, some hopeful, some skeptical, but all waiting for something to resonate. "Thank you, Clara," Elijah began, her voice steady. "I am here not only as an advocate for environmental justice, but also as a reminder that our struggles are intertwined. Workers and environmentalists, we share a common goal, a future where prosperity does not come at the cost of our planet." A ripple of agreement swept through the crowd. Elijah could feel the energy building, a sense of unity that strengthened her resolve. It is time to envision an economy that embraces sustainability. Imagine a world where clean energy creates jobs, where communities thrive alongside healthy ecosystems. This is not a distant dream. This is a reality we can achieve together. The journalist scribbled furiously as Elijah spoke, her heart racing. "We are here to invite all stakeholders, government, corporations, and citizens to engage in meaningful dialogue. We cannot afford to let our differences divide us. We must forge a path forward that prioritizes the health of our planet and the well-being of every individual." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the park. Elijah stepped back, her spirits soaring. The coalition was more than just a gathering of people. It was a movement taking root, gaining strength with every word spoken. As the conference concluded, the atmosphere shifted from tension to exhilaration. The journalists swarmed, eager to interview the leaders, and Elijah felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their message was resonating, reaching beyond the confines of the park and into the hearts of those who were still unsure. In the following days, the coalition's message spread like wildfire. Articles were published, interviews aired, and social media buzzed with discussions about the movement. The hashtag #PlanetOffNightmares gained traction, uniting activists from across the country in a call for change. Elijah watched as the narrative shifted. What had once been seen as a fringe protest was now recognized as a legitimate movement, a coalition advocating for a sustainable future. But not everyone was pleased. Nexus Industries, stung by the growing public awareness, launched a counteroffensive. Elijah watched in dismay as they circulated propaganda that painted the coalition as radical extremists. Ads flooded social media, filled with misleading statistics and emotional appeals that sought to undermine their message. One evening, as Elijah sat in her apartment reviewing the latest reports, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Clara, her tone urgent. Meet me at the community center ASAP. We need to talk. Elijah rushed out, her mind racing with possibilities. What new challenge awaited them? The streets of New Haven were alive with activity, the air thick with anticipation. As she approached the community center, she spotted Clara pacing outside, her expression one of determination. "Elijah," Clara exclaimed, pulling her inside. "You need to see this." Inside the community center, the atmosphere was charged with energy. Activists gathered around a table cluttered with papers and laptops. Clara pointed to a projected screen, where a video was playing footage from a recent town hall meeting. A city councilman was addressing the public, dismissing the coalition's demands. "These protests are a nuisance. We cannot jeopardize jobs in favor of idealistic fantasies. Nexus Industries employs thousands of our citizens, and we cannot afford to turn our backs on them." Elijah felt a wave of frustration wash over her. "They're framing us as the enemy. We have to counter this narrative." Clara nodded, urgency in her eyes. "We need to organize a town hall meeting of our own. We can invite the community, provide them with the facts, and allow them to share their stories. We need to show the councilmen that we are not just a noise, we are the voice of the people." Elijah's heart raced with excitement. "Let's do it. We need to create a platform for our community to speak out." They gathered the activists, brainstorming strategies and logistical details. The energy in the room was infectious, fueled by a shared commitment to their cause. Elijah felt a sense of belonging among them, a reminder that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. "Let's set a date for next week," Elijah proposed, looking around the room. "We'll invite everyone, the council members, local businesses, families. We need to demonstrate the power of our collective voice." As the details fell into place, the atmosphere shifted from anxiety to excitement. They crafted flyers, coordinated social media campaigns, and reached out to local news outlets to ensure that their voices would be heard. The week leading up to the town hall meeting was a whirlwind of activity. Elijah and Clara worked tirelessly, engaging with the community, gathering stories, and building momentum. They set up information booths in local markets, sharing flyers and encouraging residents to attend the meeting. As the day approached, Elijah felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They had garnered significant support, but they also faced the backlash from Nexus Industries. The stakes were higher than ever. On the day of the town hall, the community center was packed. Elijah could feel the energy in the air, a mixture of anticipation, hope, and a touch of apprehension. As she scanned the crowd, she recognized familiar faces, activists, families, and even some workers from Nexus Industries, drawn by curiosity or concern. The town hall began, and Clara opened the meeting with a warm welcome. "Thank you all for being here today. We're gathered not just to speak, but to listen, to share our stories, our hopes, and our vision for a sustainable future." Elijah took a deep breath as Clara introduced her. Stepping forward, she looked out at the crowd, feeling a rush of emotion. "We are at a crossroads," she began, her voice steady. "Today, we have the opportunity to shape the future of our community, to advocate for a world that values both people and the planet." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "Our movement is not just about environmental justice. It's about creating a thriving economy that supports every citizen. It's about ensuring our children inherit a world worth living in. We must confront the challenges head-on, together." As she spoke, she noticed a few faces from Nexus Industries in the back, their expressions skeptical yet curious. Vision knew they were a critical audience. "To those who may feel threatened by our message, I invite you to listen. We're not here to take jobs away. We're here to create new opportunities, jobs that will sustain our planet and our communities." The applause that followed was a testament to the energy in the room. Elijah felt a surge of hope. They were gaining traction, and their message was resonating. The meeting continued, with residents sharing their stories, tales of hardship, illness, and loss brought on by environmental degradation. Elijah listened intently, her heart aching for the families affected, but she also felt the fire of determination burning brighter within her. As the night unfolded, Clara and Elijah facilitated discussions, guiding the crowd toward actionable solutions. They talked about renewable energy initiatives, sustainable agriculture practices, and community-based projects that could create jobs while protecting the environment. When it was time for questions, the atmosphere shifted slightly. One of the council members stood, his expression serious. "While your passion is commendable, how do you propose we balance environmental concerns with economic growth? We cannot afford to jeopardize jobs." Elijah stepped forward, her heart racing. "We can do both. The future lies in innovation. We can invest in renewable energy technologies." Elijah felt a surge of determination as she faced the council member, the weight of her community's hopes resting heavily on her shoulders. "We must embrace innovation, not fear it," she replied, her voice steady. "The renewable energy sector is one of the fastest-growing industries in the world. By investing in solar, wind, and sustainable technologies, we can create thousands of new jobs that are not only sustainable but vital for our future." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Elijah continued, emboldened by the support. "Think about the potential: green construction jobs, energy efficiency audits, and maintenance of renewable energy systems. We can retrain workers from traditional industries to take on these new roles, ensuring that no one is left behind." The council member crossed his arms, visibly skeptical. "But how do you plan to fund these initiatives? The upfront costs are substantial, and we need to consider the economic impact on our community." Clara stepped forward, ready to back Elijah up. "We're proposing a transition plan, which includes leveraging state and federal grants, public-private partnerships, and community investments. Cities across the nation are already implementing these strategies with great success. We can learn from their experiences and adapt them to our needs." As Clara spoke, Elijah scanned the audience, witnessing a shift in expressions. The skeptical faces began to soften, replaced by curiosity. Elijah knew they were making headway, but there was still a long road ahead. A woman from the crowd stood up, her voice trembling but resolute. "I work 2 jobs to support my family, and I'm terrified of losing what little we have. How can I trust that these new jobs will be there for us?" Elijah's heart went out to her. "Your fears are valid, and we understand that change can be daunting. But we're committed to ensuring that our community is at the forefront of this transition. We will fight for training programs that provide skills needed for these jobs, and we will work to ensure that those jobs pay a living wage." The applause that followed was louder than before. Elijah felt the energy in the room shift, a collective understanding taking root. They were fighting for more than just the environment. They were fighting for livelihoods, for a future where families could thrive. The town hall continued, with voices from all sides contributing to the dialogue. Elijah and Clara encouraged open discussion, providing a platform for diverse opinions and concerns. They were not there to dismiss anyone's fears. They were there to build bridges. As the meeting wound down, the atmosphere was electric. Elijah and Clara exchanged hopeful glances, knowing they had sparked a fire of inspiration among the crowd. The coalition was gaining momentum, and they were poised to make a difference. In the days following the town hall, the movement continued to grow. The media buzzed with stories of the coalition's efforts, and community engagement surged. Elijah and Clara worked tirelessly to keep the momentum going, hosting workshops, planning future events, and connecting with local leaders. But not all the news was positive. Nexus Industries was feeling the pressure and responded with a smear campaign, attempting to discredit the coalition's leaders. Elijah received messages online filled with misinformation, hateful comments, and attempts to sow doubt within the community. It was disheartening, but she refused to let it deter her. "Elijah, we need to address this head-on," Clara said one evening as they reviewed social media posts in Elijah's living room. "We can't let them control the narrative." "I agree," Elijah replied, determination etched on her face. "We need to counter their lies with the truth. We should hold a community forum, invite experts to debunk their claims, and present real data." Clara nodded, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. and we can showcase the benefits of renewable energy through case studies from other cities. Let's highlight communities that have successfully made the transition. Over the next few days, Elijah and Clara organized the forum, reaching out to local experts, environmental scientists, and community leaders who could speak to the benefits of sustainable practices. They spread the word through flyers, social media, and community boards, eager to draw a crowd. On the day of the forum, Elijah arrived early to set up, her heart racing with anticipation. The community center was buzzing with energy as residents began to filter in. Elijah greeted them, her smile genuine and inviting. Clara was already busy arranging seating and checking the audio-visual equipment. As the crowd filled the room, Elijah took a moment to reflect. This was their chance to reclaim the narrative, to demonstrate that they were informed, passionate, and prepared to advocate for their future. When the forum began, Clara opened with a brief introduction, emphasizing the importance of community engagement and collaboration. Elijah watched as the room filled with eager faces, ready to listen and learn. The first speaker was a local environmental scientist who had worked on renewable energy projects in nearby cities. As he spoke, Elijah felt the atmosphere shift. Transitioning to renewable energy isn't just an environmental issue. It's an economic opportunity, he asserted. Cities that have invested in clean energy have seen job growth, increased property values, and improved public health outcomes. It's a win-win. Elijah noticed the skepticism beginning to fade from the faces of some audience members. She knew that with every fact shared, they were dismantling the fear that Nexus Industries had attempted to instill. As the forum continued, community members shared their stories. Individuals who had transitioned from fossil fuel jobs to renewable energy positions, highlighting how the shift not only benefited them economically, but also fulfilled their desire to contribute positively to the planet. A woman named Lisa stood up, her voice strong and clear. "I used to work in a coal plant, and I was terrified when I lost my job. But I was retrained to work in solar energy, and now I feel like I'm part of the solution. It's possible to do both, protect the environment and provide for our families." The room erupted in applause, and Elijah felt tears prick her eyes. This was the message they needed to amplify the narrative of hope and possibility. As the forum drew to a close, Clara invited Elijah to share a few words. Stepping forward, Elijah felt the weight of her community's hopes on her shoulders once more. "Thank you all for being here today. We're not just talking about change, we're living it. Each one of you has the power to influence the future of our community. Together, we can create an economy that thrives on sustainability, one that benefits all of us." The applause was deafening, and Elijah felt a rush of adrenaline. She knew they were making strides, pushing against the tide of misinformation and fear. The community was rallying behind them, ready to advocate for a brighter, sustainable future. In the days that followed the forum, the coalition's energy continued to ripple through the community. Elijah and Clara organized additional workshops, focusing on practical steps individuals could take to reduce their carbon footprint and advocate for sustainability in their own homes. As momentum grew, Elijah also began to reach out to local businesses, encouraging them to join the coalition. She understood that their support could amplify their message, demonstrating that sustainability and economic success could coexist. One afternoon, she sat down with the owner of a local cafe, a vibrant space that served as a community hub. "We're looking to partner with businesses that are committed to sustainability," Elijah explained, her enthusiasm palpable. "We'd love to feature your cafe as a model for eco-friendly practices. It could inspire others to follow suit." The owner, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, leaned back in her chair, considering the proposal. "I love what you're doing, but I'm worried about the costs of transitioning to greener practices. It sounds great, but what does it mean for my bottom line?" Elijah smiled, prepared for this concern. "I understand, and that's why we want to help. We can connect you with resources, grants, and programs that assist businesses in making the switch. Plus, being part of this movement can attract more customers who value sustainability." Sarah nodded slowly, a spark of interest igniting in her eyes. I've seen how some businesses are adapting. If it's done right, I can see how it could benefit us. Let's set up a meeting with some of your coalition members to discuss it further." As they talked, Elijah felt a sense of hope blooming. This was the essence of their movement: collaboration, partnership, and shared vision. If they could unite local businesses, they would create a powerful network of advocates for change. As the weeks turned into months, the coalition grew stronger, drawing in more community members and local businesses. Elijah and Clara coordinated events that highlighted sustainable practices, community cleanup days, workshops on composting, and renewable energy fairs. The energy was infectious, and Elijah felt a sense of fulfillment as they engaged with residents who were eager to make a difference. But amidst the success, Nexus Industries was still a looming presence. Elijah knew they wouldn't back down easily. Rumors circulated that the company was planning a large PR campaign to counteract the coalition's growing influence. One evening, Elijah sat in her apartment, poring over news articles and social media updates. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an alert about an upcoming town hall meeting where Nexus Industries would present their plans for a new facility in the area. The details included claims about job creation and economic growth. Elijah's stomach churned. They couldn't let Nexus control the narrative again. She quickly texted Clara, urgency lacing her words. Chapter 6: Rallying the Troops. Elijah stared at her phone, a mix of determination and anxiety coursing through her. Clara replied almost instantly, "We need to organize a response. This is our chance to make our voices heard." She felt a rush of adrenaline at Clara's words. This was more than just a presentation from Nexus Industries. It was a pivotal moment in their fight for environmental justice. If they didn't act quickly, the momentum they had built could be squandered, overshadowed by corporate promises wrapped in shiny packaging. Elijah texted Clara back, "Let's gather the coalition. We need to strategize and mobilize the community for the town hall." In the following hours, Elijah and Clara contacted every member of the coalition. They convened a meeting at the community center, spreading the word through social media, flyers, and word of mouth. As night fell, the center filled with passionate voices, ready to strategize their response to Nexus Industries' encroachment. Elijah stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding. She scanned the faces before her: activists, concerned citizens, local business owners, all united by a shared purpose. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "Nexus Industries is planning a major presentation at the town hall, and we need to be ready to counter their narrative." Clara stepped forward, her tone urgent. "We need to prepare our own presentation. We'll highlight the dangers of their expansion, the environmental impact, and the better alternatives we're proposing. We have facts, data, and the support of the community. But we need to rally everyone to show up at the town hall." Elijah felt a wave of enthusiasm sweep through the crowd. "Let's create a powerful visual impact. We could bring signs, wear T-shirts, and organize speeches from community members who have been affected by environmental issues. We need to show that we're not just a fringe group. We're a movement grounded in reality and hope." As the brainstorming session unfolded, ideas flowed freely. They divided into teams, one for creating informative pamphlets, another for social media outreach, and a third focused on logistics for the town hall. Elijah felt a sense of pride swell within her. This was the essence of community activism, everyone coming together to forge a common goal. The energy in the room was electric as plans solidified. Elijah's pulse quickened at the thought of what lay ahead. They would show up in numbers, not just as a protest, but as a coalition of informed citizens ready to advocate for their future. The night of the town hall arrived, and Elijah stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her coalition T-shirt adorned with the slogan, "Sustainable Futures for All." She felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This was their moment to shine, to present a united front against the tide of corporate propaganda. As she arrived at the community center, the air buzzed with anticipation. The coalition had transformed the space into a vibrant display of their mission banners, decorated the walls, tables were laden with pamphlets, and a projector was set up for their presentation. Elijah greeted everyone warmly, but she felt her heart race as she noticed the crowd gathering outside. A sea of supporters began to form, holding signs that read, "Invest in our future," and "No more pollution." She stepped outside, her heart swelling with pride at the sight. "Look at this turnout," Clara exclaimed, standing beside her, eyes wide with disbelief. "We're making a statement." As the clock neared the start of the town hall, Elijah gathered everyone together. "Tonight, we're not just representing ourselves. We're representing every individual and family who believes in a sustainable future. Let's remind the council that the voice of the community matters." When the doors to the town hall opened, Elijah led the way, a determined look on her face. The room was filled with local leaders, council members, and residents, all buzzing with conversation. Elijah took a deep breath, focusing on the task at hand. Nexus Industries had set up a large presentation screen, and their representatives stood at the front, ready to present their case. Elijah felt a knot of tension in her stomach. They had to make their voices heard above the corporate rhetoric. As the meeting began, the representative from Nexus Industries stepped forward. "Thank you for joining us tonight. We're excited to present our plans for a new facility that promises to bring jobs and economic growth to our community." His polished demeanor and well-rehearsed speech dripped with optimism, but Elijah knew better. He detailed their projected job creation numbers, economic benefits, and promises of community investment. Elijah could see some council members nodding along, captivated by the vision painted before them. When he finished, applause erupted from some corners of the room, but Elijah's heart sank. They needed to counter this narrative immediately. As the applause faded, Elijah stood up, feeling all eyes turn to her. She approached the podium, heart-pounding but resolute. "Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Elijah, and I represent a coalition of citizens dedicated to promoting sustainable practices and protecting our community's future." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "While the promise of jobs is enticing, we must consider the long-term impact of this facility on our environment and our health. There are better alternatives available: renewable energy projects that not only create jobs, but also protect the very ecosystems we rely on." Elijah noticed a flicker of skepticism on the council members' faces, but she pressed on. "We are here to advocate for our community's best interests. We cannot afford to prioritize short-term economic gain at the expense of our air quality, water sources, and overall health." As she spoke, the audience leaned in, captivated by her passion. She highlighted studies linking industrial pollution to health issues, showcasing evidence from similar facilities that had come at great environmental cost. Elijah saw some audience members nodding in agreement, their expressions shifting as they absorbed her words. "We are not against jobs. We are for sustainable jobs. Jobs that empower our community without jeopardizing our health or our environment," she concluded, her voice strong. Applause erupted, and Elijah stepped back, a wave of relief washing over her. Clara took her place at the podium, her demeanor equally passionate. "We must envision a future that integrates sustainability and prosperity. We are proposing a multifaceted plan that includes renewable energy projects, training programs for green jobs, and community involvement in decision-making." Clara highlighted successful case studies from other towns that had made the transition to sustainable practices, demonstrating how they had not only preserved their environment but also thrived economically. Elijah could see the tide beginning to turn as the crowd became more engaged. As the night wore on, several other coalition members shared their stories, emphasizing the real-life implications of the council's decisions. A local farmer spoke about the importance of preserving land for sustainable agriculture, while a healthcare worker detailed the health impacts of pollution on families in the community. After an emotional round of testimonies, the council opened the floor for questions. The atmosphere was charged with energy as residents raised their hands, eager to voice their concerns and support. A middle-aged man stood up, his voice steady. "What guarantees do we have that this new facility won't harm our health or environment? We've seen too many promises go unfulfilled." Elijah jumped in, grateful for the opportunity to address the concern. That's a valid question. The history of industrial facilities is filled with broken promises. We must advocate for stringent regulations, regular environmental assessments, and a commitment to transparency. Our community deserves better than vague assurances. The audience erupted in applause, and Elijah felt a wave of exhilaration. They were building momentum, rallying around a vision of hope and sustainability. The coalition was no longer just a group of activists. They were becoming a movement, a force to be reckoned with. As the meeting progressed, more voices joined in, echoing the need for accountability and sustainable practices. The council members, who had previously seemed indifferent, began to show signs of reconsideration. Elijah noticed a few scribbling notes, engaged in conversation with their aides. As the night wound down, Clara gathered the coalition members. "This is just the beginning. We need to keep the pressure on. We'll follow up with the council, hold them accountable, and continue to amplify our message." Elijah felt a sense of triumph, knowing they had made an impact. They had stood firm against a powerful opponent and made their voices heard. But deep down, she understood that the battle was far from over. In the weeks that followed, the coalition worked tirelessly to maintain the momentum from the town hall meeting. Elijah and Clara organized follow-up meetings with community leaders and council members, urging them to prioritize sustainable practices in their decision-making. The response from Nexus Industries had been swift. They ramped up their PR efforts, flooding local media with ads showcasing their supposed commitment to environmental responsibility. Elijah watched in dismay as misleading information continued to circulate, but she refused to let it deter her. One evening, Elijah gathered with Clara and a few other coalition members in her living room. "We need to address the misinformation head-on," she proposed. "Let's host a community forum dedicated to debunking the myths being spread by Nexus." Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, we can invite experts to speak and provide clear, factual information about the environmental impact of their proposed facility." They set to work, reaching out to local environmental scientists, health experts, and even economists who could speak to the broader implications of industrial expansion. They wanted to provide a comprehensive view of the situation. The night of the community forum arrived, and Elijah felt a mix of excitement and nervous energy coursing through her. The community center buzzed with chatter as attendees filtered in, filling the room with anticipation. Colorful banners hung from the walls, and tables overflowed with pamphlets that provided vital information about renewable energy, environmental health, and the economic advantages of sustainable practices. Elijah stood at the entrance, greeting familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and community members who shared her vision for a sustainable future. Clara joined her, her clipboard in hand, checking off attendees as they arrived. "Look at this turnout," Clara said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "It's incredible to see so many people committed to learning and advocating for change." Elijah smiled, buoyed by Clara's optimism. "We're building a movement, Clara. Tonight is about arming our community with the truth. We need to counter Nexus Industries' narrative and show that we have viable alternatives." As the clock neared the start time, Elijah took a deep breath, focusing on the evening ahead. When it was finally time to begin, she stepped onto the stage, the room quieting as she smiled at the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Elijah, and I'm honored to be part of this coalition advocating for a sustainable future. Tonight, we're here to engage in an important conversation about the proposed facility from Nexus Industries and what it means for our community." She gestured to the expert panel seated beside her, a diverse group representing environmental science, public health, and economics. "We have gathered some of the best minds in our community to share their insights and help us navigate this complex issue." The first speaker, Dr. Malik Johnson, an environmental scientist with years of experience in industrial impact studies, took the stage. He presented a compelling case, highlighting the potential risks associated with industrial expansion. He detailed case studies from other regions where similar facilities had led to environmental degradation, health issues, and community displacement. Elijah watched as the audience absorbed Dr. Johnson's information. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Elijah felt a renewed sense of hope. They were not just fighting against Nexus Industries, they were advocating for the health and safety of their community. The next speaker, a local public health expert named Dr. Maria Torres, took the mic. We have to understand that the health impacts of pollution are not just statistics. They're real people, she said, her voice passionate. Increased respiratory issues, higher rates of cancer, and other health disparities have been linked to industrial pollution. We must prioritize the health of our families over economic promises that often fall flat. Elijah felt a surge of determination. The audience was waking up to the reality that Nexus Industries had attempted to obscure. This was more than a debate about jobs. It was about safeguarding their community's future. After Dr. Torres, an economist named Mr. George Wilkins spoke. He presented data showing how communities that invested in renewable energy had not only created jobs, but also strengthened their local economies. We have the opportunity to be leaders in the renewable sector, he said. By investing in solar, wind, and energy efficiency, we can create sustainable jobs that won't harm our environment. As the speakers concluded, Elijah felt the energy in the room shift. The audience was engaged and passionate, their skepticism giving way to excitement about the possibilities of a sustainable future. Elijah took the stage again, eager to empower the audience. We've heard compelling arguments tonight, but now it's time for us to take action. We cannot allow Nexus Industries to dictate the future of our community. We need to demand accountability, transparency, and a commitment to sustainable practices. She encouraged everyone to share their thoughts and ask questions. Hands shot up across the room, and Elijah felt a surge of pride at the engagement. Residents were ready to voice their concerns and demand answers. One young woman stood up, her voice shaking slightly. How can we ensure that our voices are heard by the council? What steps can we take to advocate for sustainable practices? Elijah smiled at her. Great question. It's all about building momentum. We need to attend council meetings, speak up, and share our stories. We can organize letter-writing campaigns and mobilize our supporters to advocate for sustainable policies. The more we show that we are united and informed, the more they will have to listen. The audience erupted in applause, and Elijah felt the atmosphere shift toward empowerment. They were ready to take action. As the evening progressed, more voices chimed in, sharing personal stories of how pollution had affected their lives. A retired teacher spoke about her grandchildren's health issues, linking them to the air quality in their neighborhood. Another man shared his experience of working in the coal industry and how he had transitioned to a solar energy job, finding both financial stability and a sense of purpose. With each story, Elijah felt the weight of their collective experience. They were not just fighting for change, they were standing up for their families, their neighbors, and their future. As the forum came to a close, Elijah felt a sense of triumph. They had successfully raised awareness, sparked conversations, and mobilized the community. But the fight was far from over. They needed to channel this energy into tangible actions. We have the power to make a difference, Elijah concluded. Let's work together to ensure that our voices are heard. We'll be scheduling follow-up meetings to strategize and continue our advocacy efforts. Together, we can create a sustainable future for all. As the crowd began to disperse, Elijah felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. They had taken significant steps toward reclaiming their narrative, but she knew they needed to stay vigilant. In the weeks that followed the forum, the coalition continued to grow, and their momentum was palpable. Elijah and Clara organized regular meetings to discuss strategies, plan future events, and engage with community members. They launched a social media campaign to keep residents informed and involved, creating a platform for sharing stories, resources, and calls to action. One day, as Elijah sifted through the comments on their campaign posts, she noticed a concerning trend. While many people were supportive, a vocal minority pushed back against their message, fueled by misinformation and fear. She turned to Clara, showing her the comments. Look at this. They're spreading false information about the health impacts of renewable energy. We need to address this head-on. Clara nodded, her expression serious. We should organize a workshop on the myths and realities of renewable energy. Let's bring in experts who can clarify misconceptions and provide accurate information. Elijah agreed. They set to work organizing the workshop, reaching out to experts in the field who could debunk the myths surrounding renewable energy and discuss its safety and efficacy. They wanted to equip their community with the facts to counteract the misinformation being spread. The day of the workshop arrived, and Elijah felt a surge of hope as she prepared to welcome attendees. The community center was filled with eager faces, all ready to learn and engage. The first speaker, Dr. Leela Reynolds, an environmental chemist, began her presentation by addressing common myths surrounding renewable energy sources. Many people believe that transitioning to renewables will compromise our health or the quality of our environment. In reality, the opposite is true. Studies have shown that investing in clean energy reduces air and water pollution, which directly benefits public health. Elijah watched as the audience leaned in, engaged and curious. Dr. Reynolds provided real data and case studies, illustrating the tangible benefits of renewable energy on both the environment and public health. After her presentation, Elijah opened the floor for questions. The audience erupted with inquiries, some eager to learn more about solar energy, others questioning the safety of wind turbines. Elijah facilitated the discussion, ensuring everyone had a chance to voice their thoughts. The atmosphere was electric. This was what they had worked for, a community ready to learn and advocate for sustainable practices. One attendee, an older gentleman, raised his hand. I'm worried about the initial costs of transitioning. How can we afford this? Elijah smiled, knowing this was a common concern. That's a legitimate question. While the upfront costs can seem daunting, many renewable energy programs offer financial incentives, tax credits, and grants that can help offset those costs. Plus, in the long run, investing in renewables saves money on energy bills and contributes to job creation in our community. The audience murmured in agreement, and Elijah felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. They were dispelling myths and building a foundation for understanding. As the workshop wrapped up, Elijah felt the energy in the room shift. The audience was not only more informed, but also motivated to take action. They had a newfound sense of empowerment, ready to advocate for their community's future. Elijah and Clara took the opportunity to encourage attendees to engage with their council members, sharing what they had learned and advocating for sustainable practices. We need your voices to be heard, Clara urged. Let's schedule meetings with our representatives and share our vision for a sustainable future. As the attendees mingled and discussed what they had learned, Elijah felt a sense of fulfillment. They were making strides toward creating a community united in purpose. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The coalition organized town hall visits, letter-writing campaigns, and community events designed to engage residents and keep the momentum going. Elijah felt energized by the progress they were making. However, she couldn't shake the feeling that Nexus Industries was preparing for another offensive. The company's silence following the community forum had been unsettling, and Elijah suspected they were plotting a comeback. One afternoon, Elijah sat at her desk, a stack of papers spread out before her. The sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating the room and casting a warm glow over her notes and diagrams. Yet, despite the beautiful day, a storm brewed on the horizon both literally and figuratively. After weeks of community engagement and education, she felt a sense of accomplishment. The coalition had gained traction, and the community was more united than ever. However, the silence from Nexus Industries was deafening, and Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that they were gearing up for a counterattack. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara. I heard rumors that Nexus is planning a big announcement next week. We need to be ready. Elijah's heart raced. She texted back quickly. Let's schedule an emergency meeting. We need to mobilize our coalition and prepare for whatever they're about to throw at us. Within hours, Clara had organized a meeting at the community center. As Alicia arrived, she was greeted by familiar faces, activists, concerned citizens, and even a few local business owners who had previously remained neutral. The sense of urgency in the air was palpable. Alicia stood at the front of the room, her voice steady but urgent. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We need to discuss the rumors about Nexus Industries. We must prepare for their upcoming announcement and ensure we counter their narrative." Clara took over, pacing back and forth. "We know they're going to present themselves as a responsible corporation with the community's best interests at heart. We can't let them paint this picture without highlighting the truth about their past and the potential impacts on our community." Elysia nodded, her mind racing. "We need to gather data about their previous projects and any environmental violations they've had. Let's compile case studies of communities impacted by their facilities. The more evidence we have, the stronger our argument will be." A woman in the back, Sarah, raised her hand. "I have contacts in environmental groups who might have access to that information. I can reach out to them." "Great," Elysia encouraged. "Let's work on compiling those resources as quickly as possible. We'll need to have a clear, fact-based rebuttal ready to go when Nexus makes their announcement." The group split into teams, each tackling different aspects of their preparation. Some were tasked with gathering evidence, while others worked on crafting speeches and messages for social media. Elysia felt a surge of energy as they organized. This was what community activism was all about, everyone playing a part in a larger cause. As the meeting progressed, they also discussed logistics for the upcoming council meeting where Nexus would present their proposal. Elysia emphasized the importance of showing up in numbers. "We need to demonstrate that we're united and ready to voice our concerns. Let's mobilize as many people as possible." Hours later, the meeting concluded with a sense of purpose. Elysia felt a renewed commitment from everyone present. They were ready to face whatever Nexus Industries had planned. The next week was a flurry of activity. Elysia and her team worked tirelessly, gathering data and preparing materials to counter Nexus's narrative. They crafted pamphlets outlining the potential environmental impacts of the proposed facility, and they rehearsed speeches to deliver at the council meeting. As the day of the announcement approached, the tension in the air was palpable. Elysia felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. They were ready, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Nexus would come out swinging. On the day of the council meeting, Elysia arrived early to secure a good spot. The community center was packed, with supporters holding signs that read, "No toxic jobs" and "Our health matters." The energy in the room was electric, and Elysia felt a surge of pride as she scanned the crowd. As the meeting began, the representatives from Nexus Industries took the stage, presenting their proposal with polished professionalism. They outlined plans for job creation, community investment, and economic growth, all wrapped in slick visuals and a charismatic presentation. Elysia watched, her heart racing as the crowd began to murmur. It was a well-crafted performance, designed to charm and distract. She leaned over to Clara, whispering, "They're trying to sell this as the best thing for our community. We need to make sure our voices are heard." Clara nodded, her expression serious. "We have to be prepared to counter their claims with our data. We can't let them dominate the narrative." As the Nexus representative concluded, Elysia took a deep breath, readying herself for the battle ahead. The floor was opened for public comments, and one by one, residents began to voice their concerns. Elysia stood up, her heart pounding. "My name is Elysia, and I represent a coalition of concerned citizens dedicated to protecting our community's health and environment. While Nexus Industries has presented a compelling case for economic growth, we must consider the hidden costs that come with industrial expansion." She highlighted the risks associated with pollution, referencing the studies they had gathered over the past week. Studies have shown that communities near industrial facilities often face increased health issues and environmental degradation. We cannot sacrifice our health for the sake of short-term jobs. The audience erupted in applause, and Elysia felt a rush of adrenaline. They were rallying together, ready to stand firm against the corporate machine. One by one, coalition members took their turns at the mic, echoing Alicia's sentiments. They presented facts, shared personal stories, and highlighted the alternatives available to create sustainable jobs without compromising their health or environment. When it was Clara's turn, she stepped up, her voice strong and steady. "We are not against jobs or development. We are for responsible growth that prioritizes the health of our community and environment. We have better alternatives that can create sustainable jobs while protecting our resources." As she spoke, Alicia watched the council members, noting their expressions. They were engaged, taking notes, and occasionally glancing at one another. This was a turning point. The tide was beginning to shift. After several more coalition members spoke, the tension in the room reached a boiling point. A council member finally stood up, looking to the Nexus representatives. "Can you provide us with a guarantee that your facility won't harm our community's health? We've heard compelling evidence from our residents tonight." The Nexus representative hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "We are committed to following all environmental regulations and will conduct regular assessments to ensure compliance." The crowd reacted instantly, shouting back, "That's not enough." Alicia felt a surge of victory. They had struck a nerve, and the council members were beginning to see the strength of the community's resolve. As the meeting progressed, Alicia sensed that Nexus was losing ground. The council members engaged more deeply, questioning the lack of solid guarantees and the possible repercussions of industrial expansion. When the meeting concluded, the council announced they would review the information presented and take time to deliberate before making a decision. Alicia felt a mixture of relief and determination. They had made an impact, but the fight was not over. In the days following the council meeting, Alicia and the coalition awaited the council's decision with bated breath. They continued to strategize, knowing that Nexus Industries would likely retaliate. Clara set up a group chat to keep everyone informed, and Alicia spent countless hours reviewing the data they had collected, prepared for the next step. Then, one afternoon, she received a call from Clara, her voice frantic. "Alicia, you won't believe what just happened. Nexus has launched a social media campaign attacking us. They're calling us misinformed and radical. They're trying to undermine our credibility." Alicia felt her heart sink. "We knew this was coming. We have to counter their narrative immediately. Let's organize a response team to address the misinformation." They gathered a small group of coalition members to brainstorm. They drafted a comprehensive response, focusing on facts, personal stories, and clear messaging. Alicia encouraged everyone to engage with the community on social media, sharing the truth and dispelling the myths Nexus was spreading. As they launched their counter-campaign, Alicia felt a renewed sense of determination. They were not just defending their cause, they were building a movement. But just as they began to find their footing, another wave of news hit. The council announced a public forum to discuss Nexus Industries' proposal, scheduled for just a few days away. The coalition knew this was their opportunity to further galvanize support. Alicia called an emergency meeting, her voice steady but urgent. "We have a short window to prepare for this public forum. We need to rally our supporters and ensure our voices are heard louder than ever. This is our chance to show the council and the community the truth about Nexus and our vision for a sustainable future." Clara added, "We need to mobilize everyone's social media, flyers, and word of mouth. Let's make sure our community knows how important this meeting is." As they organized, Alicia felt a fire igniting within her. They had faced adversity and pushed back against the corporate machine. Now, they were ready to take the fight to the next level. The night of the public forum arrived, and Alicia stood outside the community center, watching as supporters gathered. It was a chilly evening, but the warmth of determination filled the air. She felt the energy radiating from the crowd, and it fueled her resolve. As the doors opened, the crowd poured in, filling the room to capacity. Alicia glanced around, seeing faces she recognized, neighbors, friends, and even those who had once been indifferent now standing together for a common. The atmosphere in the community center was charged with anticipation as Alicia took her place at the front. The room was filled with local residents, families, and community leaders, all ready to voice their concerns about Nexus Industries' proposal. Alicia felt a mix of pride and anxiety as she surveyed the crowd. This was the culmination of their efforts, a pivotal moment in their fight for a sustainable future. As the forum began, Alicia introduced herself, reminding everyone of the stakes. "Thank you all for being here tonight. We are gathered to discuss a proposal that could profoundly impact our community's health, environment, and future. It's essential that we engage in this dialogue and share our voices." The council members took their seats, looking out at the audience with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Nexus Industries representatives were also present, their polished demeanor betraying a confidence that Alicia was determined to challenge. The first speaker was Dr. Malik Johnson, who had been a crucial ally in their campaign. He presented compelling data on the environmental risks associated with industrial facilities, emphasizing the long-term health impacts on nearby residents. The room was silent as he shared studies linking industrial pollution to increased rates of respiratory issues and other health problems. Alicia watched the audience's reactions closely. They were engaged, nodding in agreement as Dr. Johnson spoke. It was clear they were grasping the gravity of the situation. Next, a local resident named Maria Garcia shared her personal story. "I live just a few miles from the proposed site. My son has asthma, and I worry that if Nexus opens this facility, his health will suffer. I want a future for my children where they can breathe clean air, not one filled with industrial pollutants." Her heartfelt words resonated throughout the room, drawing tears from some attendees. Alicia felt a rush of solidarity. This was about more than just statistics. It was about real lives impacted by decisions made in boardrooms far away. As the night progressed, the atmosphere shifted. The coalition members took turns sharing their perspectives, bolstering each other's messages. Clara passionately outlined the economic benefits of renewable energy, making it clear that there were viable alternatives to the Nexus proposal. Then came the moment everyone had been preparing for. The representatives from Nexus Industries took the stage. Alicia braced herself for the counterarguments she knew would come. The lead representative, a charismatic man named Richard Shaw, exuded confidence as he launched into his presentation. "Thank you for your attention tonight. We are here to bring jobs and economic growth to this community. Our facility will adhere to the strictest environmental regulations, and we are committed to being a responsible corporate citizen." As he spoke, Alicia noticed a few audience members crossing their arms, skepticism brewing. She exchanged glances with Clara, who raised an eyebrow, signaling that she was ready to respond. Shaw continued, outlining the purported benefits of the facility: job creation, community investment, and economic revitalization. The more he spoke, the more Alicia felt a fire ignite within her. It was a rehearsed performance, a carefully crafted narrative that ignored the realities on the ground. When he finished, the floor was opened for public comments again. Alicia stood up, her heart racing. "I want to address some of the claims made by Nexus Industries. While they talk about job creation, we must consider the hidden costs. What happens to our health and environment? We cannot prioritize short-term jobs over the long-term well-being of our families." Her voice rang through the room, and the audience erupted in applause. Clara followed suit, emphasizing the community's desire for sustainable development that did not come at the expense of their health. One after another, residents spoke out against the proposal, sharing their stories and raising questions. Alicia felt the tide turning, a wave of community solidarity rising against the corporate rhetoric. But just as the mood reached a crescendo, a voice rang out from the back of the room. It was a young man, visibly agitated. "You're all just spreading fear. You're afraid of progress and job creation." The audience quieted, and Alicia felt the tension in the air. She took a deep breath, aware that this was a moment for calm and clarity. "It's not fear we're spreading, it's concern for our health and environment. We're advocating for responsible growth that considers the long-term impact on our community." Another member of the audience stood up, reinforcing Alicia's point. We want jobs, too, but we want them to be sustainable and safe. We don't want our children to suffer because of pollution. The young man hesitated, and Alicia sensed he was being pulled into a deeper understanding of the issue. It was a reminder that their campaign was not just about opposing Nexus. It was about bringing the community together for a better future. As the forum continued, Alicia felt a shift in the atmosphere. Nexus representatives were losing their footing, struggling to counter the powerful testimonies and mounting evidence against them. The community was rising, ready to reclaim their narrative. After several hours of passionate discussion, the forum finally drew to a close. The council thanked everyone for their participation, promising to review all the information presented before making a decision. Alicia and Clara exchanged triumphant smiles as they exited the community center. They had fought valiantly, and the community had shown up for each other. But as they stepped outside into the crisp night air, Alicia felt a lingering sense of unease. "Do you think we did enough?" she asked Clara, her brow furrowed. "Nexus won't back down easily." Clara nodded, her expression serious. "We made a strong case, but we need to keep the momentum going. We can't afford to become complacent. We have to keep educating the community, sharing our message, and preparing for whatever comes next." As they walked back to their cars, Alicia felt a renewed determination. This was far from over, and they were ready to keep fighting. In the days that followed the forum, Alicia and the coalition worked tirelessly to maintain their momentum. They held strategy meetings, organized outreach efforts, and continued to engage with the community on social media. Alicia found herself inundated with messages from residents eager to get involved, and she felt a sense of hope. But the looming presence of Nexus Industries weighed heavily on her mind. She suspected they were not just sitting idly by. They would launch a counter-offensive. Her instincts were proven correct when a few days later, a press release from Nexus hit the local news. The company announced a series of community listening sessions where residents could voice their opinions and concerns. Alicia read the release, her stomach tightening. "Clara, we need to prepare for this," she said, her voice low. "They're trying to reframe the narrative again. We can't let them control the conversation." Clara looked at her, concern etched on her face. "We need to counter their narrative with our own listening sessions, where we can provide the facts and hear from the community about their true concerns. We can't allow Nexus to spin this as a positive engagement." Alicia agreed, and they set to work organizing their own events. They scheduled multiple listening sessions, inviting experts to discuss the real impacts of industrial expansion, while also providing a safe space for residents to share their stories. As the days passed, Alicia felt the pressure mounting. Nexus was ramping up its marketing efforts, showcasing supposed community endorsements and highlighting the jobs that would be created. Alicia and Clara were determined to combat this with transparency and truth. The first of their listening sessions arrived, and the community center was packed again. Alicia stood at the front, feeling the weight of responsibility. She welcomed everyone, reiterating the importance of open dialogue and community engagement. As experts presented facts about the environmental and health risks associated with industrial facilities, the audience listened intently. Residents began to share their stories, echoing their fears and concerns about what a Nexus facility would mean for their families. Alicia felt a surge of emotion as one elderly man stood up, shaking slightly. "I've lived here for over 60 years. I've seen this community grow, and I've seen how pollution has taken a toll on our health. I don't want my grandchildren to suffer because of corporate greed." His words struck a chord in the room, drawing nods of agreement and murmurs of support. Alicia felt the power of their collective voices, and she knew they were on the right path. After the session, Clara approached Alicia, her expression thoughtful. "I think we made an impact tonight, but we need to keep this energy going. We can't let Nexus overshadow our efforts." Alicia nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "Let's plan more events, keep sharing information, and engage the community. We need to mobilize and show that we're united against this proposal." As they organized their next steps, Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. They were on the brink of something monumental, and she knew they needed to stay vigilant. Days turned into weeks as the coalition ramped up its efforts. They held multiple listening sessions, engaged with local media, and continued to build momentum. Elijah felt the community rallying behind their cause, but the weight of Nexus Industries' campaign loomed large. One afternoon, Elijah received a message from Sarah, one of the coalition members. "You need to see this," she wrote, attaching a link to a news article. Elijah clicked it open, her heart racing. The article detailed Nexus's latest attempt to sway public opinion. They had commissioned a survey claiming overwhelming community support for their proposal, complete with quotes from select individuals praising the. Elijah felt her stomach drop as she read through the article. Nexus Industries had not only published a survey claiming overwhelming support for their proposal, but had also spun a narrative of unity and progress, featuring testimonials from a handful of residents who were enthusiastic about the project. The timing couldn't have been worse. It was right after their own successful listening sessions. She closed her laptop with a sharp snap, frustration boiling over. "They're using manipulative tactics to undermine everything we've worked for," she said to Clara, who was sitting nearby, sorting through pamphlets for their next event. "I saw that," Clara replied, her brow furrowed in thought. "We need to respond immediately. We can't let this stand unchallenged." Elijah nodded, her mind racing. "We have to show that their survey was skewed and not representative of the community as a whole. Let's organize a counter-survey, something that allows residents to voice their real concerns." Clara's eyes lit up. "Yes, we can distribute it at our next event and online. Let's make it clear that we're listening to the community, not just the loudest voices." They quickly set to work, drafting questions that would address the specific concerns residents had raised in their listening sessions. Elijah focused on framing the questions in a way that encouraged honesty and transparency. It was crucial that they highlighted the real issues: health risks, environmental degradation, and the community's vision for sustainable development. Within a few days, they had a counter-survey ready to distribute. They designed eye-catching flyers and set up an online form. Elijah felt a sense of urgency as they promoted the survey through social media and local community boards, emphasizing the importance of collective voices. As the responses began to roll in, Elijah's hope grew. The overwhelming majority of participants expressed concerns about pollution, health impacts, and the need for more sustainable job opportunities. They were capturing the sentiment that had emerged during their listening sessions. In the meantime, the coalition continued to hold events and engage the community. Elijah felt invigorated by the turnout, each gathering a reminder that they were not alone in this fight. Residents began to share stories about their own experiences with pollution, often recalling places in the community that had been sacrificed for industrial growth. One evening, during a community potluck, a retired teacher named Mrs. Thompson approached Elijah. "I've lived here my entire life," she said, her voice filled with passion. "I remember when this area was full of trees and wildlife. We can't let them destroy it for the sake of a few jobs. We need to protect our home." Elijah felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you for sharing that, Mrs. Thompson. It's stories like yours that will help us fight for our community." As the days passed, Elijah and Clara worked to compile the results of their survey, presenting the data at a community meeting. Elijah stood before the gathered residents, her voice steady. "Today, we're here to show that the majority of our community stands against the proposal from Nexus Industries. We've listened to your voices, and the results are clear. Our health and environment matter more than short-term jobs." The room filled with applause as she unveiled the data. Clara stepped up next, emphasizing the importance of sustainable development. "We're advocating for jobs that respect our community and our planet. We can build a better future, one that honors the values we hold dear." As they continued to present their findings, Elijah felt the tide turning. The narrative was shifting, and the community was coming together with a renewed sense of purpose. but deep down, she knew that Nexus would not back down without a fight. Just when Elijah thought they had gained ground, a new wave of challenges emerged. Nexus Industries launched a media blitz, showcasing new partnerships with local businesses and highlighting their so-called commitment to community development. Billboards began appearing across town, adorned with smiling faces and slogans like "Together for Progress." Elijah watched as the community began to respond, some people excited about the prospects of new jobs, while others felt the pressure mounting from the corporate giant. Tensions escalated on social media, where supporters and opponents of the proposal clashed. Elijah felt the weight of her responsibility. The coalition needed to keep the dialogue focused and constructive. One afternoon, she received a call from Clara, her voice urgent. "Elijah, there's a town hall meeting next week where Nexus will present more information about their proposal. We need to show up in numbers and counter their claims. This could be the turning point." Elijah agreed, and they began to organize. They reached out to their coalition members, urging everyone to attend the town hall and make their voices heard. Elijah created flyers that highlighted the importance of community participation, reminding residents that their health and future were at stake. The day of the town hall meeting arrived, and Elijah felt a surge of adrenaline as she entered the venue. The atmosphere was electric, with a mix of supporters for Nexus and community members united against the proposal. Elijah stood with Clara, scanning the crowd, searching for familiar faces. As the meeting began, Nexus representatives took the stage again, this time accompanied by several local business owners who endorsed the project. Elijah felt her heart sink as they painted a picture of prosperity and growth, showcasing testimonials that framed the facility as a community boon. The audience listened, some nodding in agreement, while others whispered to one another in disbelief. Elijah recognized the tension. They needed to respond effectively. Once the floor was opened for public comments, Elijah stood up, determination coursing through her veins. While Nexus paints a rosy picture of job creation, we must consider the consequences of this proposal. We've gathered data from our community that shows a clear preference for sustainable development that prioritizes our health and environment over temporary jobs. As she spoke, Elijah felt the eyes of the audience on her. She shared stories from their counter-survey, emphasizing the concerns residents had expressed about pollution and health risks. The crowd began to rally, echoing her sentiments with applause. Clara followed, passionately addressing the council. "We want a future where our children can grow up in a safe and healthy environment. This isn't just about jobs, it's about our community's long-term well-being." One by one, coalition members stepped up, their voices resonating with the crowd. They reinforced the importance of protecting the community's health and environment, while presenting alternative job opportunities that didn't come at a cost. The Nexus representatives seemed taken aback, struggling to regain control of the narrative. Elijah could see them exchanging nervous glances, realizing that their carefully constructed story was unraveling. As the meeting continued, a local teacher named Miss Lee stood up, her voice steady. "I teach our children about sustainability and the importance of protecting our planet. How can we, as a community, endorse a project that threatens their future?" The room erupted in applause, and Elijah felt a rush of energy. They were gaining ground, and the community was rising to the occasion. But as the meeting drew to a close, Elijah sensed that Nexus would not retreat easily. They would likely regroup and strategize to counter this momentum. She exchanged a determined glance with Clara, knowing that their fight was far from over. In the days following the town hall, Elijah and the coalition remained vigilant. They continued to engage with the community, spreading their message through social media and hosting more events. But as they did, they could feel the pressure intensifying. Nexus Industries launched a counteroffensive, flooding the airwaves with ads showcasing community support. Elijah saw their commercials featuring local business owners touting the potential benefits of the proposed facility. The slick marketing felt overwhelming, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to cut through the noise. One afternoon, Elijah received an email from a local journalist she had befriended during the campaign. "Elijah, "I'd love to do a feature on your coalition and the community's concerns," she wrote. "This story needs to be told, especially now." Elijah felt a surge of hope. "This could be our opportunity to reach a broader audience," she said to Clara as they discussed the journalist's offer. Clara nodded, excitement in her eyes. "Let's make sure we present a compelling narrative. We need to highlight real stories and the data that supports our position." They met with the journalist, who listened intently as Elijah and Clara shared the coalition's journey, the data from their survey, and the personal stories that had emerged. The journalist took notes, clearly invested in the story. As the article came together, Elijah felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was a chance to get their message out to the wider community and counter the misleading narratives being propagated by Nexus. When the article was finally published, Elijah felt a rush of excitement. The headline read, "Community United Against Nexus Proposal. Residents Share Concerns Over Health and Environment." It featured powerful testimonials from local residents, emphasizing their fears and hopes for the future. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media lit up with shares and comments, and Elijah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The community was engaging, and the article was opening up discussions that had previously been silenced. But as the excitement settled, Elijah knew that Nexus would respond, and respond they did. In the following days, Nexus launched an aggressive campaign to discredit the article. They issued press releases claiming that the article was biased and misrepresented their intentions. Elijah watched as they began to mobilize their supporters, leveraging their resources to push back against the growing discontent. Feeling the pressure mount, Elijah called for another coalition. The following week was a whirlwind of activity as the coalition prepared for their next big community meeting. Elijah felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. This gathering could be pivotal in determining the course of their campaign against Nexus Industries. The community had responded positively to their recent article, but Elijah knew that Nexus would not relent easily. In the days leading up to the meeting, Elijah and Clara brainstormed strategies to counter Nexus's aggressive pushback. "We need to harness the energy from the article and keep the momentum going," Clara said, pacing the floor of their makeshift campaign office. "We can't let them drown us out with their resources and marketing." Elijah nodded, her mind racing. "Let's create a visual presentation that highlights our findings and showcases community stories. We can include video testimonials from residents who feel strongly about protecting our environment." Clara's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. We can also invite a few local experts to speak, people who can provide concrete data on the health impacts of industrial pollution." They quickly divided the tasks, with Clara focusing on securing speakers and Elijah working on gathering video testimonials from the community. Over the next few days, they reached out to residents, capturing their stories on camera. Elijah was moved by the raw emotions shared in those moments, the fears, the hopes, and the deep-seated love for their community. On the night of the meeting, Elijah stood at the front of the packed room, adrenaline surging through her. The energy was palpable. Community members were buzzing, some even wearing shirts emblazoned with slogans like "Protect Our Future" and "No to Nexus." Elijah welcomed everyone, her voice steady despite the nerves. "Thank you all for coming tonight. We are at a critical juncture in our fight against the Nexus proposal. Our community deserves to have its voice heard and to determine the future we want." As she introduced Clara to present the coalition's findings, Elijah felt a wave of pride wash over her. Clara's presentation was compelling, weaving together data on health risks with personal stories from the community. The audience was captivated, nodding along, and Elijah could feel a growing sense of solidarity. Then came the video testimonials, which added a powerful visual element to their argument. Elijah watched as the faces of her neighbors filled the screen, faces filled with concern, determination, and hope. One by one, they articulated their fears about pollution and the need for sustainable jobs. The emotional weight of their stories resonated deeply within the audience. After the presentation, the floor was open for comments. Elijah felt a rush of energy as residents began to speak out. One by one, they shared their thoughts, reinforcing the message that they wanted a future free from pollution and corporate greed. Elijah, I've lived in this community for decades, and I've seen the impact of industrial facilities firsthand, an older man said, his voice quivering with emotion. We can't let our children inherit a toxic environment. The crowd erupted in applause, and Elijah felt her heart swell with hope. They were making progress, but she knew that Nexus would be watching, ready to counter any gains they made. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a group of Nexus representatives entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. Richard Shaw, the charismatic spokesperson for Nexus, stepped forward, flashing a confident smile. We appreciate the opportunity to engage with the community, he said, his voice smooth. However, we must clarify that much of what has been presented tonight is misleading. Elijah felt a rush of frustration. You had your chance to speak at the town hall, Richard. Tonight is about the community's concerns. He waved a hand dismissively. With all due respect, Elijah, we believe it's vital for the community to hear both sides of the story. We're committed to transparency and collaboration. Elijah clenched her fists, but Clara stepped forward. This isn't about silencing voices, Richard. This is about ensuring that our community's health and environment come first. The tension in the room was palpable as the two sides faced off. Elijah could feel the anxiety rising among the residents. This was a moment of reckoning, and she knew they needed to stand firm. Richard smirked, his confidence unshaken. We have a wealth of support in this community. Let's not forget the positive impact we can make. With that, he launched into a carefully crafted speech, outlining the supposed benefits of the Nexus proposal. Elijah listened, heart-pounding, as he threw out statistics about job creation, economic growth, and community investment. But behind his polished words, she could see the thinly veiled disregard for the very real concerns raised by the community. When he finished, Elijah stood tall. You claim to prioritize our community, yet the data shows a clear majority of residents oppose this proposal. We cannot accept jobs that come at the expense of our health and environment. The room erupted in applause, and Elijah felt a surge of determination. She wouldn't let Nexus control the narrative. The meeting continued with heated exchanges. Supporters and opponents of the Nexus proposal clashed, with both sides passionately defending their positions. Elijah took careful notes, recognizing the arguments that resonated with the audience and those that fell flat. As the meeting came to a close, Elijah felt a sense of empowerment. They had fought back against Nexus's narrative and had shown the community's solidarity. But the battle was far from over. In the following days, Elijah felt the ripple effects of the meeting. Social media buzzed with discussions, and the coalition was receiving messages of support from residents who had been previously on the fence. The community was beginning to see the power of their collective voice. However, Nexus was not going down without a fight. Elijah received a call from Clara late one afternoon, her tone urgent. Elijah, I just saw a press release from Nexus. They're claiming to have secured a partnership with several local businesses who support their proposal. Elijah felt her stomach twist. They're trying to paint a picture of community backing while we're still working to mobilize our supporters. We can't let them dominate the narrative. Agreed, Clara replied. We need to respond quickly. Let's reach out to those businesses and see where they truly stand. The next few days were a flurry of activity as Elijah and Clara contacted local business owners. They discovered that many had been approached by Nexus, but were unsure about the implications of the partnership. Some expressed concern about the environmental impact of the proposal, while others had been swayed by the promises of economic growth. Elijah and Clara decided to host a special meeting for local business owners, inviting them to discuss the potential impacts of the Nexus facility. They wanted to create a space where business owners could voice their concerns and understand the broader implications of supporting such a project. On the night of the meeting, Elijah felt a mix of hope and anxiety as she prepared to address the small crowd of local entrepreneurs. They gathered in a community hall, the air thick with tension. Elijah introduced the purpose of the meeting, emphasizing the importance of understanding the potential consequences of the Nexus proposal. As local business owners shared their thoughts, Elijah noticed a shift. Many expressed skepticism about the long-term viability of supporting Nexus, citing concerns over potential environmental damage and its effect on local tourism and agriculture. Is it worth jeopardizing our community's health for short-term economic gain? One woman asked, her voice steady. We need to think about the legacy we're leaving for future generations. Elijah felt a rush of encouragement. Exactly. We can advocate for sustainable development that benefits our local economy without sacrificing our environment. The meeting ended on a high note, with several business owners agreeing to join the coalition's efforts. Elijah felt a renewed sense of purpose as they left the hall. They were building a coalition not just among residents, but within the business community as well. As the weeks passed, the coalition's momentum grew stronger. Elijah and Clara continued to strategize, focusing on spreading their message far and wide. They held more community events, shared powerful stories, and actively engaged on social media. But just as they felt they were gaining ground, Nexus launched another wave of advertisements. This time, they featured testimonials from local business owners who had signed on to support the proposal, their faces beaming with excitement about the opportunities it would bring. Elijah's heart sank as she watched the commercials air on television. Nexus was clearly using their resources to create a narrative of community support, and it was working to confuse some residents. Clara, we need to respond to this. We can't let them control the conversation, Elijah said, determination in her voice. They decided to hold an emergency meeting with their coalition, inviting both residents and business owners to discuss the recent developments. Elijah presented the coalition's data and emphasized the importance of collective action. Let's counter their narrative with our own stories and facts, Elijah urged. We need to show the community that there are real concerns and that we can't ignore the potential consequences of the Nexus facility. As the meeting progressed, more residents and business owners stepped up, sharing their thoughts and concerns. Elijah felt the energy in the room shift as people began to realize that they were not alone in their opposition to the proposal. When the meeting concluded, a local farmer named Tom stood up. I'm willing to put my name on a petition against this proposal. We need to make our voices heard. Elijah's heart raced as others joined in, and soon they were drafting a petition to gather signatures. The energy. Elijah felt a surge of determination as the coalition moved forward with the petition. They were finally channeling their collective frustration into something tangible, an actionable step that could amplify their voices against Nexus Industries. As they gathered signatures from residents and local business owners, Elijah realized that their movement was beginning to take shape, transforming from a grassroots campaign into a powerful force for change. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. Elijah, Clara, and the coalition members organized petition drives at local events, farmers' markets, and outside popular businesses that had not yet publicly supported Nexus. With each signature, they felt a renewed sense of hope and solidarity. The community was standing together, and the momentum was palpable. One afternoon, while Elijah was setting up a booth at the community center, she received an unexpected visit from Miss Lee, the local teacher who had spoken so passionately at the town hall meeting. Elijah, I want to help you with this campaign, she said, her voice filled with conviction. The students need to understand the importance of advocating for their future. Let's organize a school event where they can learn about environmental issues and the Nexus proposal. Elijah's heart swelled with gratitude. That's a brilliant idea. If we can engage the youth and empower them to speak out, we'll have a real force behind our campaign. Over the next few weeks, Elijah and Miss Lee worked tirelessly to plan the event, which they named Future Voices. They organized activities and invited local experts to speak on environmental issues, pollution, and sustainable development. The aim was to educate students and encourage them to share their thoughts with the community. As the event approached, excitement built. The local schools rallied around the initiative, with students creating posters and presentations to express their opinions on the Nexus proposal and environmental protection. Elijah felt an overwhelming sense of hope. The next generation was ready to take a stand. On the day of Future Voices, the community center buzzed with energy. Students, parents, and residents filled the room, and the atmosphere was electric. Elijah stood at the front, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness as she welcomed everyone. "Thank you all for being here today," Elijah said, her voice steady. "This is an opportunity for our community's youth to express their thoughts on the future they want to see. Your voices matter, and together we can make a difference." The event unfolded with a series of presentations, where students shared their insights on environmental issues. Some spoke passionately about the need for clean air and water, while others shared creative ideas for sustainable practices. Elijah was moved by their enthusiasm. They were not just the future, they were the present. After the presentations, the students participated in a brainstorming session where they crafted messages to share with the community. They wrote letters, created art, and even composed a song that encapsulated their feelings about protecting the environment. It was a testament to their creativity and commitment. As the day came to a close, Elijah felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The students' passion had reignited the coalition's energy, reminding everyone why they were fighting so hard against Nexus. In the weeks following the event, the coalition experienced a surge in support. The videos and letters from the Future Voices event circulated on social media, drawing attention from local news outlets. Elijah received calls from reporters eager to cover the growing grassroots movement. The community was finally rallying around a unified message. However, Elijah knew that Nexus would not take this lying down. They had already begun to counter the narrative with their own marketing efforts. One evening, as Elijah was reviewing news articles about their campaign, she stumbled across a new press release from Nexus. New environmental partnership announced. Nexus teams up with local leaders, it read, detailing a newly formed advisory board comprising local business leaders and city officials who supported the proposal. Elijah's heart sank as she realized the implications. Nexus was attempting to legitimize their proposal by aligning themselves with community leaders, effectively framing the opposition as fringe dissenters. "This is a tactical move," Clara said, pacing the floor of their office after Elijah shared the news. "They're trying to paint a picture of overwhelming support while we're still building our base. We can't let them control the narrative." Elijah agreed, her mind racing. "We need to reach out to those leaders who haven't aligned with Nexus yet. Let's organize a meeting where they can hear our concerns and see the real data we've gathered." Clara nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "I'll work on drafting invitations and reaching out. We need to make sure they understand what's at stake." In the following days, Elijah and Clara compiled their research, data, and testimonials from community members. They focused on creating a presentation that highlighted the potential risks of the Nexus proposal, including the documented health impacts from similar facilities in other communities. As the day of the meeting arrived, Elijah felt a mix of hope and anxiety. They had invited local business leaders, city officials, and educators. It was crucial that they presented a united front, showcasing the community's genuine concerns. The meeting took place in a spacious conference room, and Elijah felt her heart race as she stood before the attendees. "Thank you all for coming," she began, taking a deep breath. "Today, we want to share with you the voices of our community, those who will be directly affected by the Nexus proposal." As Elijah presented their findings, she could see the expressions of concern on the faces of the attendees. She shared testimonials from residents, emphasizing the health risks associated with industrial pollution and the community's desire for sustainable development. When Clara took over, she introduced local experts who could speak to the environmental impacts of similar facilities. Their insights added weight to the coalition's argument, painting a stark picture of the potential consequences of Nexus's plans. As the meeting progressed, several attendees expressed their concerns. A local business owner named Sarah raised her hand, her voice steady. "I want to support our community, but I'm worried about the long-term impacts on our health and environment. We need to prioritize sustainable solutions. Elijah felt a wave of relief. This was exactly the kind of dialogue they had hoped to foster. Others began to chime in, sharing their thoughts and raising questions about Nexus's commitment to environmental stewardship. As the discussion continued, Elijah felt a growing sense of optimism. They were shifting the conversation, slowly dismantling the narrative that Nexus had constructed. But she also knew that Nexus would respond with more tactics to regain control. Days turned into weeks, and the coalition's petition continued to gain traction. Elijah was encouraged by the number of signatures they had collected, and the community's support was unwavering. Yet, she could sense that Nexus was ramping up their efforts. Their advertisements became more aggressive, showcasing glowing testimonials from supposed community supporters. One evening, as Elijah scrolled through social media, she came across a video of Richard Shaw speaking at a local business conference. He was charismatic, touting the benefits of the Nexus proposal and claiming that the coalition was misrepresenting the facts. Elijah felt a surge of frustration. "He's twisting the narrative again," she said to Clara, who was sitting beside her. "We need to respond with our own video, one that showcases the real voices of our community." Clara's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Let's do it. We can compile footage from the students and residents who spoke at our events and create a video that counters their claims." They immediately got to work, gathering footage from their previous events and testimonials from community members who were eager to share their experiences. Elijah spent hours editing the video, weaving together heartfelt stories that encapsulated the essence of their fight. When the video was finally complete, Elijah felt a rush of pride. It was a powerful representation of their movement, showcasing real concerns and a collective commitment to protecting their community. They released the video on social media, and within hours, it began to spread like wildfire. Elijah watched as shares, likes, and comments flooded in. The community was responding. They were rallying behind their cause. But just as she felt the momentum shifting in their favor, Elijah received a call from Clara, her voice shaking with urgency. "Elijah, I just heard that Nexus is planning a press conference next week. They're bringing in outside experts to counter our claims." Elijah's heart sank. "They're going to try to undermine everything we've built. We need to prepare a strong response." They quickly organized a strategy session with the coalition, gathering input from community members and local experts. Elijah emphasized the need to maintain a united front and to ensure that their voices were amplified. "We've already shown that we're a strong, engaged community," she said, her voice steady. "Let's continue to push back against their narrative with facts, data, and, most importantly, our personal stories." As the press conference day approached, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Elijah and Clara felt the pressure mounting. This was their chance to counter Nexus's claims and solidify community support. On the day of the press conference, Elijah arrived early, heart racing with anticipation. She took a deep breath as she watched Richard Shaw step up to the podium, flanked by a panel of experts. The media buzzed around him, eager to capture every word. "Today, we're here to clarify our commitment to this community," Richard began, his tone confident. "We believe in creating jobs and opportunities while ensuring the health and safety of our residents." Elijah listened intently, heart pounding. Richard outlined the supposed benefits of the Nexus proposal, but she could see through the polished rhetoric. The press conference was underway, and Elijah felt her adrenaline surge as she stood at the back of the room, surrounded by reporters and community members. Richard Shaw's voice boomed, his confidence filling the space as he painted an optimistic picture of the Nexus proposal. Elijah could feel the tension rising in the crowd, a mix of skepticism and disbelief. "While we understand the concerns some residents have raised, we have conducted thorough assessments and are committed to implementing the highest environmental standards," Richard proclaimed, his gaze sweeping over the audience. Elijah exchanged glances with Clara, who stood beside her, fingers crossed. They both knew this was a critical moment for their coalition. The stakes had never been higher. As Richard continued, He showcased a series of charts and graphs that depicted projected economic growth, job creation, and even a glowing endorsement from a well-known environmental consulting firm. Elijah clenched her fists. The data seemed selectively chosen, lacking context and nuance. Finally, Richard introduced a local environmental expert who had agreed to lend credibility to Nexus's claims. The man stood confidently, his demeanor reassuring as he spoke about the rigorous safety measures Nexus would employ. Elijah felt her frustration boil over. They were deliberately trying to manipulate public perception. When the press conference concluded, Elijah took a deep breath. They needed to respond immediately. "Clara, we have to make sure the community hears our side. We can't let Nexus's narrative go unchallenged." Clara nodded, her expression resolute. "Let's organize a community forum where we can bring in our own experts to counter their claims. We need to educate the public on the real risks." That evening, they convened a strategy meeting with the coalition. Elijah laid out their plan for the forum, emphasizing the need to present factual information and powerful testimonials from community members. "We have to show the community that Nexus is not being honest about the potential consequences," she urged. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Local experts agreed to participate, and residents who had been directly affected by pollution from industrial facilities offered to share their stories. Elijah felt a renewed sense of hope. They were not backing down. In the days leading up to the forum, Elijah and Clara worked tirelessly to promote the event, creating flyers and using social media to spread the word. They emphasized the importance of community engagement and invited residents to share their questions and concerns. When the night of the forum arrived, the community center was packed. Elijah stood at the front, her heart racing as she looked out at the sea of familiar faces. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Elijah began, her voice steady but passionate. "We're here to have an honest conversation about the Nexus proposal and to ensure that every voice in our community is heard." As the evening unfolded, local experts presented data on the health impacts of industrial pollution, sharing studies that highlighted the long-term effects on air quality, water sources, and community health. Elijah watched as the audience engaged, asking questions and sharing their thoughts. One resident stood up, his voice shaking with emotion. "I lost my father to respiratory issues that I believe were caused by pollution from nearby factories. We can't let this happen to our community. We deserve better." Tears filled Elijah's eyes as the audience erupted in applause. This was the power of their movement, real stories from real people who were determined to fight for their future. As the forum continued, Clara facilitated a queue and a session, and Elijah felt a surge of energy as more residents stepped forward to share their concerns. It was clear that the community was rallying together, and they were not going to let Nexus dictate their future. When the forum concluded, Elijah felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. They had effectively countered Nexus's claims and had strengthened the coalition's resolve. But she knew that Nexus would not stay silent for long. In the following weeks, the coalition continued to build momentum. They expanded their outreach efforts, speaking at local events, engaging with residents on social media, and gathering more signatures for their petition. Elijah was heartened by the community's growing commitment to the cause. However, just as they were gaining traction, Nexus launched a new advertising campaign, this time featuring residents who claimed to support the proposal. Elijah watched in disbelief as familiar faces from their community appeared in polished videos, extolling the virtues of the Nexus project. "They're trying to create a false narrative," Elijah said, anger rising within her. "We need to counter this immediately. We can't let them drown out the voices of those who are genuinely concerned." Clara nodded, her expression resolute. "Let's reach out to those who've spoken against the proposal and gather their testimonials. We need to show the community that dissenting voices exist." Elijah spent hours reaching out to residents, many of whom were eager to share their thoughts. They gathered video testimonials from people directly affected by pollution, illustrating the stark realities of living near industrial facilities. As they compiled the videos, Elijah felt a sense of urgency. They needed to release the testimonials quickly before Nexus could regain control of the narrative. Finally, they completed the video montage and shared it across their social media platforms. Elijah watched anxiously as it gained traction, views climbing as more residents shared it with their networks. Then came the unexpected. The video sparked a firestorm of conversation, drawing attention from local news outlets. Elijah and Clara were contacted for interviews, and they quickly agreed to share their message on air. The community was engaged, and their voices were resonating. But just as they were experiencing a breakthrough, Elijah received a call that turned her world upside down. Richard Shaw was requesting a public debate a chance to present their views side by side. "What do you think?" Clara asked, her brows furrowed. "Is this a trap?" Elijah felt a mixture of apprehension and excitement. It could be risky, but we can't shy away from the challenge. If we present our case well, it could strengthen our position in the community. After some deliberation, they agreed to the debate. Elijah felt a surge of determination as they prepared their arguments, rallying the coalition and gathering data to support their case. They had to present a united front and counter Nexus's claims decisively. The night of the debate arrived, and the community center was packed once again. Elijah took a deep breath as she stepped onto the stage, flanked by Richard Shaw and the local expert Nexus had brought along. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, and Elijah could feel the weight of the moment. The moderator introduced the debate format, allowing each side time to present their case, followed by a Q and a session. Elijah spoke first, her voice steady as she outlined the coalition's concerns about the Nexus proposal. She emphasized the health risks, environmental impacts, and the community's desire for sustainable development. Richard Shaw followed, exuding confidence as he highlighted the supposed benefits of Nexus. He showcased statistics and anecdotes, weaving a narrative of economic growth and community support. As the Q and A session began, Elijah felt a surge of energy. Questions flew from the audience, and she watched as Richard struggled to address the community's concerns. "Mr. Shaw, how can you guarantee that Nexus won't harm our environment?" one resident asked. Richard fumbled for a response, trying to reiterate their commitment to safety. Elijah could see the cracks in his facade, the growing doubt among the audience. "Let's remember that industrial growth often comes at a cost," Elijah interjected. "We cannot ignore the lessons learned from other communities that have suffered the consequences of prioritizing profits over health." The tension in the room was palpable. Elijah felt a rush of adrenaline as she continued to counter Richard's claims, emphasizing the importance of community engagement and transparency. As the debate unfolded, Elijah sensed a shift in the audience's mood. Residents were leaning in, engaged, and questioning the information presented by Nexus. The passion in the room was palpable, and Elijah felt a surge of hope. When the debate concluded, the moderator thanked both sides, but the crowd was abuzz with discussion. Elijah felt a sense of exhilaration. They had effectively challenged Nexus's narrative, and the community was starting to see through the smokescreen. In the days following the debate, Elijah felt a renewed sense of determination as the coalition continued to mobilize. News outlets covered the event extensively, and community discussions erupted on social media. The tide seemed to be turning in their favor. But just as they were gaining momentum, Elijah received a call from Clara that made her stomach drop. "Elijah, you need to see this," Clara said, her voice filled with urgency. "Nexus is planning a massive rally next week, and they're bringing in a prominent speaker to back their claims." Elijah's heart raced. "We have to counter this. We can't let them drown out our message." They quickly organized a counter rally, reaching out to community members and local organizations for support. They wanted to create a space where residents could come together to express their opposition to the Nexus proposal and show their solidarity. The day of the counter rally arrived, and Elijah felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as she stood at the front of the community center, surrounded by a crowd of supporters. Signs waved in the air, and chants of "Protect Our Future" echoed through the streets. Elijah took a deep breath, her heart swelling with pride. Thank you all for being here today. Together, we are showing our commitment to protecting our community and our environment. We will not be silenced. Elijah stood at the front of the community center, the energy of the crowd coursing through her like electricity. She could feel the weight of their hopes and fears, their determination to protect their home. The signs raised high bore messages of solidarity, clean air, clean future, and our voices matter. The atmosphere was charged, a palpable sense of unity surrounding her. Today, we stand together to send a clear message. We will not allow our community to be compromised for the sake of profit, Elijah declared, her voice ringing out over the enthusiastic cheers of the crowd. We are here to fight for our future, for our children, and for the very air we breathe. As the crowd erupted in applause, she felt invigorated. The rally had drawn a diverse crowd: families, students, business owners, and elderly residents, all united in their resolve against Nexus Industries. They were here not just for themselves, but for the generations to come. Clara stood beside her, holding a megaphone and signaling to the next speaker, a local environmental scientist named Dr. Lena Tran. Elijah had met Dr. Tran at one of their community forums, and she had quickly become a key ally in their fight. Elijah watched as Dr. Tran stepped up to the podium, her demeanor calm and authoritative. "Thank you, Elijah, and thank you to everyone here today," Dr. Tran began, her voice strong. "The stakes are high, and we need to understand the full implications of what's being proposed. Environmental degradation is not just an abstract concept, it affects our health, our economy, and our way of life." Dr. Tran shared alarming statistics about the health impacts of pollution, illustrating how communities near industrial sites experienced increased rates of respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular diseases, and other serious health issues. Elijah saw the crowd's expression shift, concern deepening as they absorbed the information. "What we're asking for is not just a stop to the Nexus proposal," Dr. Tran continued. "We're advocating for sustainable solutions that benefit our economy without sacrificing our health. This community deserves better." Elijah felt a surge of pride as the crowd erupted into cheers once more. It was moments like this that reminded her why they were fighting so hard. After Dr. Tran's speech, Clara took the stage again, her passion infectious. "Now, I want to hear from you. This movement is about our community, and we want to elevate your voices." She invited residents to share their stories and experiences, and one by one, people stepped forward. A young mother named Sarah shared how the pollution from nearby factories had affected her children's health. "I'm terrified for their future," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to stand up for them, to ensure they can breathe clean air and live healthy lives." An elderly man named Mr. Jenkins spoke about his experiences growing up in the area. "I remember when this community thrived because we took care of our environment," he recalled. "We need to restore that legacy for future generations." As each speaker took the microphone, Elijah felt a mix of emotion: sadness for their struggles, but also fierce hope for their collective strength. This was a community that wouldn't back down. After the speeches, they held a march through the streets, chanting slogans and carrying banners. Elijah led the way, heart racing as she took in the sight of her neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to make their voices heard. The energy was infectious, and she couldn't help but smile. As they marched, Elijah felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. They were challenging an industrial giant, and it felt as though they were on the brink of something significant. But in the back of her mind, a nagging worry lingered. Nexus would respond, and when they did, it could be fierce. The following week was a flurry of media coverage. News outlets reported on the counter-rally, highlighting the community's resistance to the Nexus proposal. Elijah and Clara conducted interviews, sharing their vision for a sustainable future. The coalition's message was gaining traction, and the community was rallying behind them. But with the increasing attention came escalating tensions. Elijah received a call from Clara, her voice filled with urgency. "Elijah, I just got word that Nexus is planning a counter-rally of their own. They're bringing in a big-name environmental consultant to claim that their project will actually benefit the community." Elijah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. They're not going to let this go. We need to prepare ourselves for whatever they throw at us. The coalition quickly convened a strategy meeting. They analyzed Nexus's previous tactics and brainstormed ways to counter their narrative. Elijah emphasized the importance of presenting irrefutable facts and real stories from community members. We need to amplify our message even louder, she urged. Let's gather more testimonials, reach out to local media, and maybe even set up an information booth at the upcoming farmers market to engage more residents. Clara nodded, her eyes bright with determination. And we can create a counter-campaign online to expose the truth about Nexus's project. We need to make sure the community sees both sides. As the days progressed, they worked tirelessly to execute their plan. They organized a video campaign that featured more testimonials from residents, showing the potential consequences of the Nexus proposal. They also reached out to local businesses and organizations for support, hoping to create a broader coalition against Nexus. But just as they were making headway, Elijah received a shocking email from a local journalist. Elijah, I think you should know that Nexus is planning to discredit the testimonials you've gathered. They're attempting to frame them as biased or influenced by the coalition. Elijah felt her heart race as she read the message. They're going to try to undermine our credibility. We need to be prepared for their attacks. Determined not to be caught off guard, Elijah and Clara began crafting a response. They reached out to the individuals featured in their testimonials, asking if they would be willing to go on record about their experiences. The community rallied around the idea, and many residents agreed to speak out. When the day of Nexus's counter-rally arrived, Elijah felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. They knew that this was going to be a pivotal moment, and they needed to stand strong against the wave of misinformation. As she stood in front of the community center, she saw the crowd gather for the counter-rally. The Nexus supporters were a mix of business owners and employees, flanked by a few local politicians. Richard Shaw stood at the podium, exuding confidence as he prepared to speak. Elijah glanced at her coalition members, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. We've prepared for this moment, she reminded them. We know the truth, and we have the community behind us. When Richard began to speak, Elijah listened intently. He touted the economic benefits of the Nexus proposal, presenting glossy charts and fabricated endorsements from supposed experts. This project is not just an opportunity, it's a promise of prosperity for our community, he proclaimed. Elijah could feel the tension in the air. She knew that this was a critical moment. They had to respond swiftly and effectively. As soon as Richard concluded his speech, Clara took the stage, her voice steady and assertive. Thank you for gathering here today. We need to clarify the facts regarding the Nexus proposal. Our community is not a playground for corporate interests. We are here to protect our health, our environment, and our future. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Elijah felt the energy shift. Clara presented the real data on the health impacts of pollution, referencing studies that detailed the consequences of industrial growth without environmental consideration. She then invited several residents to share their testimonials, each one adding weight to their argument. As the day unfolded, Elijah felt the atmosphere shift. More and more residents stood up to voice their concerns, countering the narrative being pushed by Nexus. Elijah felt a swell of hope. They were standing strong together, and the community was beginning to see through the facade. But then, something unexpected happened. Richard Shaw, sensing the tide turning, attempted to dismiss the testimonials as emotionally charged and not rooted in fact. We need to prioritize facts over feelings, he shouted, trying to regain control of the crowd. Elijah felt her blood boil. Facts matter, Mr. Shaw, but so do the lived experiences of our residents. You can't dismiss the reality of those who have suffered because of pollution. The people who have shared their stories today deserve to be heard, and their health is not just a statistic. The crowd erupted, chanting, "Our voices matter, our health matters." Elijah felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the turning point they had been fighting for. As the rally drew to a close, Elijah and Clara stood together, surrounded by supporters. The energy in the air was electric, and Elijah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had pushed back against Nexus's narrative, and their community was standing stronger than ever. But as the dust settled, Elijah knew that the battle was far from over. Nexus would undoubtedly retaliate, and they needed to stay vigilant. In the following days, Elijah and the coalition continued to strategize. They monitored Nexus's response to the rally and prepared for any potential counterattacks. As tensions mounted, they knew that they were entering a critical phase in their fight. One evening, as Elijah was wrapping up a meeting with Clara, her phone buzzed with an alert. It was an email from a prominent local journalist, requesting an interview about the ongoing conflict with Nexus. Elise. Elijah sat at her cluttered kitchen table, the glow of her laptop illuminating her tired features. It had been weeks since the counter-rally, and the momentum was palpable. But she also sensed the brewing storm on the horizon. Nexus was not going to back down quietly. The email from the local journalist, Jenna Marquez, had arrived just as Elijah had been contemplating their next move. Jenna was known for her investigative reporting and had a reputation for digging deep. If they could get their story out through her, it could tip the scales even further in their favor. Elijah, Clara's voice broke her concentration as she entered the room, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. Did you see the news? Nexus is ramping up their PR campaign. They just released a statement claiming our coalition is spreading misinformation. Elijah's heart sank. Of course they are. They'll do anything to undermine us. She gestured toward her laptop. I just got an interview request from Jenna Marquez. We need to take advantage of this opportunity to set the record straight. Clara raised her eyebrows. That's great, but we need to be prepared for the questions she might ask. We can't let Nexus twist our words. Elijah nodded, already strategizing. Let's outline the key points we want to make. We need to highlight the health impacts, share personal stories, and emphasize our vision for a sustainable future. As they worked through the evening, compiling statistics, testimonials, and counterarguments, Elijah felt a surge of determination. They were up against a corporate giant, but she was more convinced than ever that they could win this fight. The day of the interview arrived, and Elijah was a bundle of nerves. She dressed carefully, opting for a simple blue blouse and black slacks, professional, but approachable. As she made her way to the coffee shop where they had agreed to meet, her mind raced with thoughts of the questions Jenna might ask. When Elijah entered the cafe, she spotted Jenna at a corner table, her notepad open and a pen poised. The journalist looked up, her expression friendly yet focused. Elijah, thank you for meeting with me. I've been following the Nexus story closely, and I'd like to hear your side. Thanks for having me, Elijah replied, sliding into the chair opposite Jenna. I appreciate the opportunity. As they settled into the conversation, Elijah found her voice. Jenna asked pointed questions about the coalition's concerns, and Elijah responded with passion and conviction, detailing the environmental and health risks associated with the Nexus proposal. She shared stories of residents who had been affected by pollution, each anecdote strengthening her argument. I want to emphasize that this isn't just about stopping a project, Elijah stated firmly. It's about advocating for a sustainable future for our community. We want to prioritize clean air, safe water, and healthy living conditions. Jenna nodded, jotting down notes. That's a powerful message. How do you respond to Nexus's claims that your coalition is misrepresenting facts? Elijah leaned in, her expression serious. We're not misrepresenting anything. We are presenting the truth as it is experienced by those who live here. The community deserves to know the potential consequences of industrial development. Nexus is trying to silence dissenting voices because they know we have the support of the community behind us. After nearly an hour of back and forth, Jenna seemed satisfied. This is exactly the kind of story I want to tell. Thank you for your candor, Elijah. I think this will resonate with readers. As Elijah left the cafe, a sense of relief washed over her. She felt as though they had just taken another step toward victory. But just as she was savoring the moment, Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an alert from a local news station, announcing that Nexus was planning a massive rally of their own, this time with political endorsements and a lineup of well-known speakers. Unbelievable, Alicia muttered under her breath as she read the details. Clara would want to know immediately. Later that evening, the coalition convened for an emergency meeting. The mood was tense as Alicia briefed everyone on the news. Nexus is going all out, she said, pacing in front of the group. They're pulling in politicians and trying to create a narrative that makes it seem like the entire community supports them. We need to respond quickly. Clara crossed her arms, her brow furrowed. We can't let them steal the spotlight. What's our game plan? Alicia took a deep breath, formulating her thoughts. We need to organize a counter-rally on the same day. We have to show that there are just as many, if not more, voices against Nexus. We'll use social media, flyers, anything to get the word out. The room erupted in chatter as coalition members began brainstorming logistics. Alicia felt a swell of gratitude for the support around her. They were truly in this together. Let's also reach out to local businesses and organizations for endorsements, Clara suggested. If we can get influential voices to back us, it could make a big difference. As they began assigning tasks, Alicia felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was a critical moment, and they had to seize it. The following week was a blur of activity. Alicia coordinated with local businesses and organizations, securing endorsements and gathering support. Clara took charge of promoting the counter-rally, using social media to build excitement and engagement. When the day of the counter-rally arrived, Alicia arrived early at the park where they had chosen to gather. She felt the adrenaline course through her veins as she set up the sound system and organized banners and signs. The atmosphere was electric. Community members were arriving, eager to show their support. As the crowd began to swell, Alicia looked around at the sea of familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had come together for a common cause. She felt a sense of pride wash over her. This was their community standing up for itself. Clara joined her, beaming with excitement. We've got a great turnout. Look at everyone coming together. Alicia's heart swelled as she surveyed the crowd. We need to make sure our voices are heard today. Let's kick this off. With that, Alicia took the stage, her heart racing as she faced the crowd. Thank you all for being here today. Together, we are sending a powerful message that we will not be silenced. Nexus may have their money and influence, but we have the heart of this community. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Alicia felt invigorated. As the rally progressed, local leaders and residents took the microphone, sharing their stories and highlighting the potential dangers of the Nexus project. Each testimony fueled the fire of the movement, and Alicia could sense the solidarity growing stronger. As the afternoon wore on, Alicia was approached by a group of young activists who had brought their own handmade signs. We want to help. Can we join you? One of them asked, excitement dancing in their eyes. Absolutely. This is a collective effort, Alicia replied, welcoming them into the fold. Their enthusiasm reminded her of why they were fighting. It was for future generations. But as they rallied, the atmosphere shifted. Alicia caught wind of Nexus's rally just down the street. A sense of foreboding washed over her. Clara, we need to keep an eye on their rally. We can't let them overshadow us. As the minutes ticked by, tension filled the air. Alicia noticed groups of Nexus supporters moving toward the park, their demeanor aggressive. She felt her heart race. This could turn confrontational. Suddenly, a loudspeaker blared, and Richard Shaw stepped up to address his supporters. This community needs progress, and we cannot let a vocal minority hold us back. His words echoed through the park, igniting a ripple of anger among Alicia's supporters. Alicia took a deep breath, stepping to the front. We are not a minority. We are the heart of this community, and we will not be intimidated by corporate interests. The crowd cheered, rallying around her words. But as the Nexus rally grew louder, Alicia could see the tension escalating. She glanced at Clara, worry etched on her face. We need to maintain our composure, Clara urged. Let's not give them any reason to provoke us. Elijah nodded, but her heart raced. The situation was growing volatile. She could feel the divide between the two groups intensifying, each side representing conflicting visions for their future. Just as Elijah thought they might be able to defuse the situation, a loud shout erupted from the Nexus side. A group of supporters began to chant, trying to drown out Elijah's rally. The atmosphere turned electric, and Elijah felt the tension tighten. "Stay calm," Elijah shouted, raising her hands. "We're here for our community, and we won't be silenced." But the chants grew louder, and she could see some of Nexus's supporters moving closer. The scene quickly escalated. Elijah watched as a few Nexus supporters stepped over, taunting the crowd. Clara moved to Elijah's side, her expression tense. "We need to keep this peaceful." Elijah stepped forward, addressing both groups. "We're all neighbors here. Let's focus on what unites us rather than divides us." Elijah's heart raced as the tension in the park reached a boiling point. The chants from the Nexus supporters echoed ominously, drowning out her words. She glanced at Clara, who looked equally concerned. This was not the peaceful gathering they had envisioned. "Let's stay focused," Clara shouted, trying to rally their supporters. "We're here to advocate for our community, not to engage in a fight." But a few individuals from the Nexus side were pushing forward, a look of defiance in their eyes. Elijah felt the energy shift. It was as if a storm was brewing. The crowd of supporters behind her was getting restless, some raising their fists in solidarity, while others looked worried. "Elijah!" a voice called from the back. It was Sarah, the young mother who had shared her story at the rally weeks earlier. "What do we do?" "Let's keep calm. We're here for peace," Elijah replied, trying to project confidence. "We must show that our community is united." But just as she spoke, a shout from the Nexus side pierced the air. "You're lying. You're just a bunch of radicals trying to ruin our town." The crowd of Nexus supporters surged forward, fueled by anger and defiance. Elijah's heart raced as she saw a few members of her own coalition begin to step toward the confrontation. "Everyone, back up," Clara shouted, stepping in front of Elijah. "Let's not escalate this." Elijah could feel the energy shifting dangerously. "We need to defuse this," she urged, looking around for allies. "We can't let this turn into a fight. That's exactly what they want." Before she could say more, Richard Shaw took to the microphone again, his voice booming across the park. "These people want to hold us back. They want to keep our community in the past while they play politics. We need to move forward." The Nexus supporters erupted into cheers, and Elijah could feel the weight of their words pushing against her resolve. She stepped forward, wanting to reclaim the narrative. "Richard, we're not against progress. We want progress that doesn't come at the cost of our health or our environment," Elijah shouted, trying to make her voice heard over the din. But as she spoke, someone from the Nexus side threw a plastic bottle toward her, narrowly missing. Gasps rippled through her supporters, and Clara stepped up beside her, eyes blazing. "This isn't how we do things. We're better than this." Elijah's stomach churned. "Everyone, please, let's not fight," she raised her hands, trying to calm the escalating chaos. "We're here for our community." A Nexus supporter yelled back, "You don't care about progress. You just want to keep us from succeeding." The tension grew unbearable, and Elijah felt her heart pounding in her chest. Clara looked at her, desperation in her eyes. "We need to retreat. We don't want this to get violent." Elijah didn't want to back down. This was their moment to stand strong. But the increasing hostility was palpable, and she knew they couldn't afford a confrontation that could escalate into violence. "Okay," she finally relented, her voice low but firm. "Let's regroup and focus on our message. We'll come back stronger." Clara nodded, leading the way as they began to move away from the confrontation. Elijah felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. They had fought so hard to rally the community, only to see it nearly devolve into chaos. As they retreated to a quieter area of the park, Elijah took a deep breath. "We need to re-strategize," she said, looking around at her coalition members. We can't let them get the upper hand. We need to hit back hard with facts, Clara suggested. Let's compile everything we've gathered and push it out on social media. We need to show the community that our rally is about truth, not just emotions. Elysia nodded, her mind racing with ideas. And we need to keep the focus on the health and safety of our families. That's what this is really about. Just then, Sarah approached, her expression troubled. I feel like we lost a chance to connect with people who might have been on the fence. What do we do if they think we're just out for confrontation? Elysia felt a pang of regret. You're right, Sarah. We need to show that we're open to dialogue, that we want to listen as much as we want to speak. Clara chimed in, let's plan a community forum. We can invite both sides to discuss the issues openly and respectfully. It'll show that we're committed to finding a solution together. As the group began discussing logistics, Elysia felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't done yet. If Nexus thought they could intimidate them into silence, they were sorely mistaken. The next few days were filled with planning. Elysia and the coalition worked tirelessly to organize the community forum. They reached out to local businesses, schools, and residents, hoping to foster a space where both sides could come together and discuss their concerns. On the day of the forum, the community center was abuzz with activity. Elysia arrived early, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. The room was set up with chairs arranged in a circle, a welcoming layout designed to encourage dialogue. Banners hung on the walls, promoting their vision for a clean and healthy community. As attendees began to trickle in, Elysia greeted familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and even a few individuals from the Nexus side who had decided to participate. The atmosphere was a mixture of apprehension and hope, and Elysia felt a wave of determination wash over her. Clara joined her, adjusting her clipboard nervously. Are you ready for this? It could get heated. Elysia took a deep breath. I am. We need to show everyone that this isn't about confrontation, it's about understanding. When the forum officially began, Elysia took the stage, her heart pounding. Thank you all for coming. We're here today to listen, to share, and to find common ground. Our community deserves a future that prioritizes health, safety, and sustainability. She glanced around the room, noticing both supporters and opponents in attendance. We're not here to dismiss each other's concerns. We want to hear from everyone, to understand what you value and what you fear. As the discussion unfolded, people began to share their perspectives. Some Nexus supporters voiced their concerns about job loss and economic stagnation if the project were blocked. Others expressed skepticism about the coalition's motives. We need jobs, one man said, his voice firm. How do you expect us to support our families without industry? Elysia nodded, acknowledging the concern. I understand that, and we agree that jobs are important, but we believe there are ways to create jobs that don't sacrifice our health or environment. We can advocate for sustainable development that provides economic opportunities without harming our community. A woman from the coalition spoke up. Our goal is to find solutions that work for everyone. We're not against progress. We want progress that protects our families. The conversation continued, shifting from confrontation to constructive dialogue. Elysia felt a sense of relief as people began to listen and engage with each other's stories. The atmosphere, once fraught with tension, began to soften. As the evening wore on, Elysia found herself listening more than speaking. She observed how community members were beginning to find common ground, acknowledging each other's fears and hopes. The discussions became less about us versus them, and more about how can we move forward together. Just as Elysia thought they might be turning a corner, a Nexus supporter stood up, visibly agitated. You talk about sustainability, but what does that even mean? You're just trying to block progress because you're afraid of change. Elysia felt her heart race again. It's not about fear, it's about responsibility. We have to think about the long-term impacts on our community and our children. The decisions we make today will shape our future. The tension hung in the air, but Elysia was resolute. We're not trying to stop progress. We're advocating for a different kind of progress, one that values people and the planet." The man shook his head, frustration evident. "It feels like you want to push us into a corner. If we lose this project, what happens to our town?" Elijah stepped forward, meeting his gaze. "That's why we're here today, to have these discussions. We're all invested in this community. Let's work together to find a way that respects both our environment and our economy." Gradually, other attendees began to speak up, sharing their concerns about pollution and health alongside economic fears. Elijah felt a sense of hope rising within her. Maybe they could bridge the gap after all. As the evening drew to a close, Elijah looked around at the faces in the room, some tense, some thoughtful, but all engaged. They had created a space for dialogue, and that alone felt like a victory. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said, her voice steady. "This is just the beginning of a larger conversation. Let's keep talking, and let's continue to find ways to work together." As the attendees began to disperse, Elijah felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It hadn't been perfect, and there were still many challenges ahead, but they had opened the door to meaningful dialogue. Just then, Clara approached her, a smile spreading. As Elijah left the community center that evening, she felt an unfamiliar mix of exhaustion and optimism. The forum had been a long, emotionally charged event, but the conversations had opened pathways for understanding that she had once thought impossible. People had listened to one another, acknowledged fears, and considered perspectives outside their own. Clara caught up with her outside, her face flushed with excitement. "That was amazing. Did you see how people were really engaging with each other?" Elijah nodded, her heart still racing. "I did. I think we might have actually started to shift the conversation. People are beginning to see that this isn't just about one side winning. It's about finding common ground." Clara grinned, her enthusiasm contagious. "Exactly. And if we can keep that momentum going, we might really be able to make a difference." But as they walked to the parking lot, Elijah's mind was racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. "We can't stop here. We need to build on this momentum. We should organize more events, workshops, discussions, anything that gets people talking." "I'm on board," Clara said, her determination evident. "But we also need to prepare for Nexus's next move. They won't just sit back after this." Elijah's stomach churned at the thought. Nexus was not known for their patience. "You're right. They'll want to retaliate. We need to keep our coalition strong and ready for anything." As they reached their cars, Elijah's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Jenna Marquez, the journalist who had interviewed her a week earlier. She quickly opened the message and read it aloud to Clara. "Elijah, I'm following up on our conversation about Nexus and the community response. I'd love to get a comment from you regarding the forum and how you feel it went. Also, any insights on the next steps for your coalition?" Clara raised her eyebrows, excitement gleaming in her eyes. "This is our chance to amplify what happened today. We should emphasize the need for continued dialogue and community engagement." Elijah quickly typed a response. "Thanks, Jenna. The forum was a significant step forward in bringing our community together. We're focused on fostering ongoing conversations and ensuring that everyone feels heard. We believe it's essential to find solutions that respect both the environment and economic concerns. I'd love to discuss this further." After sending the message, Elijah felt a sense of purpose settle over her. She was determined to keep the community's voice at the forefront of the discussion. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and planning sessions. Elijah, Clara, and the coalition worked tirelessly to arrange a series of follow-up events. They organized workshops focused on sustainable development, community health, and economic alternatives to the Nexus project. One sunny Saturday morning, Elijah stood in front of a gathering of community members in the local park, ready to kick off their first workshop. "Thank you all for coming today. We're excited to dive into how we can create sustainable economic opportunities that benefit everyone in our community." The crowd murmured in response, a mix of familiar faces and new ones, all eager to engage. Elijah felt a sense of pride swelling in her chest. This was what they had worked for, a space where everyone could share ideas and collaborate on solutions. The first session featured local business owners who had transitioned to eco-friendly practices. They shared their experiences and the benefits they had reaped both environmentally and economically. Elijah watched as people took notes, nodding and asking questions. After the session, Elijah facilitated a discussion among attendees. What are some ideas you have for sustainable practices we can implement in our community? A man raised his hand. What about a community garden? We could grow our own food, reduce waste, and bring people together. Elijah smiled, jotting down notes. That's a fantastic idea. Community gardens can improve our food security and provide education on sustainable practices. As ideas flowed, Elijah felt a surge of hope. The community was coming together to envision a different future, one that prioritized health and sustainability over corporate interests. The workshops continued throughout the month, each one more successful than the last. Attendees began to share their own stories of connection, collaboration, and creativity. Elijah could see the coalition growing stronger as more people joined their efforts. However, the tension with Nexus simmered beneath the surface. Elijah could sense the company's growing frustration, especially as their PR campaigns continued to twist narratives and misrepresent the coalition's efforts. One afternoon, while reviewing some materials for their next workshop, Elijah received an unexpected phone call. It was Jenna Marquez. Elijah, I wanted to touch base regarding our last conversation. I think it's important for your coalition to respond to Nexus's recent statements about the forum. They're claiming that your group is spreading fear and misinformation. Elijah felt a familiar tension rise in her chest. Of course they are. It's classic deflection. They don't want to engage with the facts we've presented. I think it would be beneficial for you to offer a counter-narrative. You have a platform now, and people are listening, Jenna urged. Elijah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility. You're right. We need to make it clear that we're advocating for a healthy community and a sustainable future. We won't back down. Great. I'll help you draft a response. Let's make sure your voice is heard, Jenna said. After the call, Elijah felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had to push back against Nexus's tactics, not only for their coalition, but for the community as a whole. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Elijah and Clara collaborated with Jenna to craft a strong response to Nexus's claims. They included facts, statistics, and testimonials from community members who had benefited from the workshops. When the response was published, Elijah felt a rush of adrenaline. The article highlighted their commitment to dialogue, emphasizing the importance of community health and sustainability. It also called out Nexus for their tactics, framing them as efforts to divert attention from the genuine concerns of residents. As Elijah shared the article on social media, she watched the reactions pour in. The community's response was overwhelmingly positive. Supporters thanked them for standing firm and for advocating for a healthier future. But with every positive comment came the inevitable backlash. Nexus supporters took to social media, attempting to discredit Elijah and her coalition. They claimed that the workshops were merely a cover for an anti-progress agenda, and that the coalition was being manipulated by outside interests. Elijah felt the sting of their words, but refused to let it deter her. We can't let them silence us, she said to Clara during a strategy meeting. This is exactly what they want, to intimidate us into submission. Clara nodded, determination in her eyes. We need to keep pushing forward. Let's plan an even bigger community event. We can showcase the positive changes happening in our community and invite everyone to participate. As they brainstormed ideas, Elijah's mind raced with possibilities. What if we organized a festival? We could highlight local businesses, showcase eco-friendly products, and hold panels on sustainable living. It would be a celebration of our community. I love that idea, Clara exclaimed. A festival could draw in more people and show that we're about positive change. Elijah felt her heart lift at the thought. They could create a space where the community could come together, celebrate their achievements, and reaffirm their commitment to a sustainable future. Weeks later, as the festival day approached, Elijah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They had worked tirelessly to organize the event, and now it was time to see it come to life. On the morning of the festival, Elijah arrived at the park early to oversee the final preparations. Colorful banners decorated the area, and booths showcasing local businesses and eco-friendly products lined the path. The air buzzed with anticipation as families began to gather, children darting around with smiles on their faces. Clara joined her, holding a clipboard filled with last-minute details. "Everything looks fantastic. I think we're ready to go." Elijah beamed at the sight of their hard work paying off. "This is it. We're showing the community what we're all about." As the festival kicked off, Elijah welcomed attendees, introducing local businesses and highlighting the workshops they had organized in recent weeks. The atmosphere was lively, with music playing, children laughing, and conversations bubbling around them. But as the day progressed, Elijah spotted a group of Nexus supporters gathered near one of the booths, their expressions tense. A knot formed in her stomach. She knew they wouldn't let the festival go unchallenged. Elijah approached Clara, concern etched on her face. "I think we should keep an eye on that group. They look like they're planning something." Clara nodded, her brows furrowing. "Let's stay alert, but we can't let them disrupt the festival. This is about positivity and community." As the festival continued, Elijah saw the Nexus supporters begin to vocalize their dissent. "This is a waste of resources. You're just spreading lies," one of them shouted. Elijah felt her heart race as she stepped forward, trying to maintain the peaceful atmosphere. "We're here to celebrate our community and discuss solutions together." Elijah stepped forward, her heart pounding as she addressed the crowd. The atmosphere, once filled with laughter and excitement, had shifted. People turned to watch, a mix of curiosity and concern on their faces. "Everyone, let's keep this a space for dialogue and understanding," she called out, her voice steady but urgent. "We're here to celebrate our community and work together toward a sustainable future." The Nexus supporters, a small but vocal group, didn't relent. "You're just trying to manipulate everyone," one shouted, anger spilling over. "We need jobs, not your pie-in-the-sky ideas." Elijah glanced at Clara, who was standing by, ready to intervene if things escalated. She took a deep breath, trying to channel the calm energy she had worked so hard to cultivate. "I understand that job security is a real concern. That's why we're here today to talk about alternatives that can benefit everyone in our community." A murmur spread through the crowd. Elijah could see some Nexus supporters hesitating, their expressions softening. It was a small crack in their armor, but she knew they could push through it. "Let's have an open conversation," she continued. "What if we shared our ideas instead of shouting at one another? We're all invested in this community's future." A young woman stepped forward from the crowd, her expression determined. "I want to hear what you have to say. What are your alternatives?" Elijah seized the moment. "Thank you. We're advocating for sustainable jobs like renewable energy, ecotourism, and local agriculture. These industries can provide jobs while protecting our health and environment." The crowd began to shift, and Elijah noticed more people nodding, some even stepping closer. It was a sign that they were willing to listen. "But what about the jobs you're trying to eliminate?" Another Nexus supporter called out. "What happens to the workers at the plant?" Elijah felt the weight of that question. "That's a valid concern. Our goal isn't to shut down existing jobs without a plan. We believe in job transition programs, helping workers gain new skills for the jobs of the future. We can work together to create a roadmap that supports both the environment and the economy." As she spoke, she felt a surge of energy, drawing from the support of those around her. People were listening, engaging. The tension from earlier began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of possibility. Clara stepped forward, her voice passionate. "This festival is about coming together as a community. Let's hear each other out, share our stories, and build connections." We might be more alike than we think." A small cheer erupted from the crowd, and Elijah felt hope bloom in her chest. The festival had the potential to be a turning point, a moment of real connection amidst the noise. As the Nexus supporters listened, some began to share their own experiences. "I work at the plant, and I'm worried about my family's future," one man admitted, his voice shaky. "I want to provide for them, but I also don't want to hurt the environment." Elijah nodded, empathy flooding her voice. "That's exactly why we need to talk about these issues together. Your concerns matter, and your stories are part of this community's fabric. Let's explore how we can find a path forward that respects everyone's needs." Slowly, more voices joined the conversation. People from both sides began to share their fears, hopes, and experiences. Elijah could feel the walls between them beginning to crumble. As the discussions continued, Elijah moved through the crowd, engaging with attendees and ensuring everyone felt included. The festival had transformed into a forum for ideas, a space where community members could voice their concerns and work toward a shared vision. Later in the day, Elijah stood by a booth showcasing local artisans who used sustainable practices. She watched as people gathered, admiring the handmade goods while engaging in conversation. The atmosphere was vibrant, filled with laughter and new friendships being forged. But as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Elijah noticed a figure lurking on the periphery of the festival. Richard Shaw, the leader of Nexus, stood watching, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, but Elijah sensed the tension radiating off him. Clara approached, noticing Elijah's gaze. "Is he going to cause trouble?" Elijah shook her head. "I don't know, but I think we should invite him to join the conversation. He might be willing to listen." "Are you sure? He's been pretty aggressive," Clara cautioned. "I believe in the power of dialogue. If we can extend an olive branch, maybe he'll see that we're not the enemy." With that, Elijah approached Richard, her heart pounding. As she neared, she offered a friendly smile. "Richard, thank you for coming. Would you like to join us? We're having a discussion about how we can work together for our community's future." Richard regarded her for a moment, surprise flickering across his face. "You think I just join in after everything?" "I think it's important that all voices are heard," Elijah replied, maintaining her composure. "We're here to find solutions, not to push anyone out." He hesitated, then finally nodded, albeit begrudgingly. "Fine, but I'm not making any promises." Elijah led him back to the group, where discussions were lively. As they settled into the conversation, Richard began to speak. "Look, I get that you're concerned about the environment, but we have real jobs on the line here, and I think you're underestimating the impact this project will have on our community's economy." Elijah listened attentively, responding thoughtfully. "I understand that, Richard, but what if we looked at job creation through a different lens? There are opportunities in renewable energy that can create more jobs than the Nexus project ever could." Richard frowned. "That's easy to say, but how do we make that transition? It's not just about saying we want new jobs." "Exactly," Clara chimed in, eager to support Elijah. "That's why we've been working on transition plans and workshops. We want to provide the training and resources necessary to make that shift feasible for everyone." Elijah could see Richard considering their points. The energy in the group had shifted once again, and people were engaging with him directly, asking questions and sharing their concerns. The discussions flowed seamlessly, with more individuals chiming in, bridging gaps and building connections. Elijah felt a sense of exhilaration as she watched the barriers between opposing sides start to break down. As the festival began to wind down, Elijah and Clara gathered feedback from attendees. They had created a space that allowed for genuine discussion, and people seemed eager to continue the conversation. "Elijah, this was incredible," Clara said, beaming. "People are excited and ready to take action. I think we really made a difference today." Elijah smiled, her heart full. "We did. But this is just the beginning. We need to keep this momentum going and ensure our community knows that we're here for them." As they packed up the festival materials, Elijah's mind raced with possibilities. They had opened a door to meaningful change, and she was determined to walk through it. The following week, Elijah and Clara met with a coalition to discuss the festival's impact and strategize their next steps. The room buzzed with energy as everyone shared their thoughts and ideas. "I think we should create a community task force," suggested Sarah, the young mother who had been vocal at the earlier forums. "We can focus on sustainable practices, job training, and engage with local businesses to promote green initiatives." "That's a brilliant idea," Clara replied, her eyes shining. "We could invite both coalition members and Nexus supporters to join. It would show that we're committed to working together." Elijah nodded in agreement. A task force would help facilitate ongoing discussions and keep everyone involved. It's about creating a platform for continuous dialogue. They brainstormed logistics, discussing how to ensure diverse representation and foster a spirit of collaboration. Elijah felt invigorated by the possibilities. They were not just reacting to Nexus anymore. They were shaping their own narrative and creating a pathway towards sustainable change. As the meeting wrapped up, Elijah felt a renewed sense of hope. Their coalition was growing stronger, and community engagement was blossoming. It was clear that they had the support of many residents who believed in a healthier, more sustainable future. But as she left the meeting, a knot of apprehension tugged at her thoughts. She knew Nexus wouldn't sit idle. They had already begun to retaliate against the coalition, and she could sense the storm brewing. A few days later, Elijah received an alarming call from Jenna Marquez. "Elijah, have you seen Nexus's latest ad campaign? They're painting your coalition as a group of radicals trying to ruin the town. It's pretty damaging." Elijah's stomach dropped. "I had a feeling they would retaliate. We need to respond quickly. I recommend a press conference. Let's get ahead of this before it spirals out of control," Jenna suggested. Elijah nodded, determination flooding her veins. "Let's do it. We can clarify our message and present the community task force as a unifying effort." Within days, they organized a press conference at the community center. The day of the press conference dawned with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Elijah stood in front of the podium, glancing at the gathered crowd, a mix of local reporters, coalition members, and curious citizens. Clara stood by her side, offering silent support. Elijah took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. This was not just about responding to Nexus. It was an opportunity to unite the community and reassert their vision for a sustainable future. She stepped forward, clearing her throat as the chatter quieted down. "Thank you all for being here today," Elijah began, her voice steady. "We are gathered to address the recent statements made by Nexus and to reaffirm our commitment to this community. We believe that our future lies not in conflict, but in collaboration." The murmurs in the crowd faded, replaced by attentive silence. Elijah continued, "We have heard the concerns regarding job security, and we understand the fear that comes with change. But we want to clarify that our coalition is dedicated to creating sustainable job opportunities, not eliminating them." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, we are announcing the formation of a community task force. This task force will include representatives from our coalition, local businesses, community members, and even Nexus supporters. Our aim is to work together to develop a comprehensive plan for sustainable economic growth that benefits everyone." A ripple of surprise coursed through the audience. Elijah could see the journalists scribbling notes, and Clara smiled, nodding in approval. "We believe that by collaborating, we can harness the potential of this community, protect our environment, and ensure that no one is left behind," Elijah said, her voice gaining strength. "This isn't about choosing one side over another. It's about finding solutions that honor both our livelihoods and our planet." As she spoke, she could feel the energy in the room shifting. People leaned in closer, engaged and intrigued. Elijah glanced at Clara, who looked proud and hopeful. After her speech, Elijah opened the floor for questions. A reporter from the local newspaper raised her hand. "Elijah, What do you say to critics who claim your coalition is radical and out of touch with the community's needs? Elijah took a moment to gather her thoughts. I would say that our coalition is deeply rooted in this community. We are your neighbors, your friends, and your family members. We are listening, and we are committed to engaging with everyone to address their concerns. We invite all voices to the table, including those who disagree with us. That's the only way we can find real solutions. The atmosphere was electric, and Elijah felt a surge of confidence. The crowd was responding positively, and she could see nods of agreement from various attendees. This was what they had worked for, a chance to reshape the narrative. Another journalist asked, "What specific actions will the task force take to address the community's fears about job loss?" Elijah replied, "The task force will focus on several key areas: job transition programs, skills training, and exploring sustainable business opportunities. We aim to engage local businesses in these initiatives to ensure that everyone has a stake in the future. It's about creating pathways for workers to transition into new roles without losing their livelihoods." As the conference continued, Elijah felt the momentum building. She answered questions, shared stories from community members, and highlighted the positive feedback from the recent festival. The support from the crowd was palpable, and she could sense that they were ready for change. After the event wrapped up, Elijah and Clara stood together, their hearts full. "You did it, Elijah. That was amazing," Clara exclaimed, beaming. "Thanks to all of you," Elijah replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "This was a team effort. Now we need to keep this energy going and make sure the task force truly represents our community." As the days turned into weeks, the task force took shape. Elijah was thrilled to see community members stepping up to join, sharing their skills and experiences. Local business owners brought innovative ideas, while former Nexus employees voiced their concerns and aspirations. Elijah found herself in the role of facilitator, guiding discussions and ensuring that everyone's voice was heard. Together, they mapped out strategies for community gardens, renewable energy initiatives, and educational workshops aimed at equipping residents with new skills. But not everyone was on board with the task force. Nexus, feeling threatened, ramped up its PR campaign, continuing to paint the coalition as disruptors. Rumors spread through social media, fueled by misinformation and fear. Elijah felt the weight of these attacks. "We need to respond," she said during one of the task force meetings. "We can't let them define our narrative. We should organize a community rally to celebrate our progress and show that we're united." Clara nodded, her determination shining through. "Yes, let's invite everyone, supporters, skeptics, even Nexus employees. We need to show that our community is stronger together." Over the next few weeks, the task force worked tirelessly to plan the rally. They coordinated speakers, organized entertainment, and promoted the event across all platforms. As the date approached, excitement filled the air, but so did apprehension. On the day of the rally, the sun shone brightly as community members gathered in the town square. Elijah felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration as she stepped onto the stage. The crowd was diverse, a sea of faces ranging from enthusiastic supporters to cautious observers. "Thank you all for being here today," Elijah began, her voice ringing out. "Today, we come together not just as neighbors, but as a united community. We stand here to celebrate the potential we hold when we work together." The crowd erupted into cheers, and Elijah could feel the energy surging through her. She shared stories of community members who had already begun to benefit from the task force's initiatives, highlighting local businesses that had adopted sustainable practices and individuals who were learning new skills. As the rally continued, Elijah saw Richard Shaw standing at the back, arms crossed, but his expression seemed contemplative. Elijah took a deep breath, deciding to invite him onto the stage to share his perspective. "Richard, would you like to say a few words?" she called out, her heart racing. The crowd fell silent, and Richard looked taken aback. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from defensive to open. Thank you, Elijah," he started, his voice shaky but sincere. "I have to admit, I've been skeptical of this coalition and the changes being proposed. But what I see today is a community that truly cares about one another. I respect that." Elijah felt a wave of hope. "Thank you for being here, Richard. We want to work together, and we believe that collaboration is the key to our community's success." Richard nodded, visibly softening. "I may not agree with everything, but I'm willing to listen. We all want the best for our families. If we can talk openly, maybe we can find common ground." Cheers erupted from the crowd again, and Elijah felt a surge of triumph. This was the breakthrough they had been hoping for, a real dialogue that could bridge the divide. As the rally wrapped up, Elijah felt a sense of fulfillment. They had created a space for connection and collaboration, and the atmosphere buzzed with possibility. Over the following months, the task force continued to gain traction. They hosted community workshops, trained individuals for new jobs, and collaborated with local businesses to implement sustainable practices. Elijah felt invigorated by the progress they were making together. Yet, Nexus continued to push back, launching legal challenges against the task force and attempting to discredit their efforts. It was a constant battle, but Elijah refused to let it deter her. At one of their meetings, Elijah stood in front of the group, determination blazing in her eyes. "We will not back down. We are building something beautiful here, and we won't let anyone take that away from us. Let's focus on the positive changes we're making and continue to amplify our message." As they strategized, the atmosphere in the room was filled with resilience. The task force members shared stories of success, encouraging one another to keep pushing forward. As winter approached, the community rallied around a new initiative, creating a sustainable holiday market. Local artisans, food producers, and environmentally conscious vendors would come together to showcase their goods, all while promoting a message of sustainability and community spirit. Elijah felt a rush of excitement as the market day arrived. The town square was beautifully decorated with lights, and the air was filled with a smell of seasonal treats and warm beverages. The community came together, celebrating not just the holidays, but the progress they had made. As Elijah walked through the market, she smiled at familiar faces. Children played in a designated area, while adults engaged in conversations about the task force's next steps. It felt like a culmination of everything they had worked for. Later in the evening, as the sun set, Elijah stood on a small stage to address the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This market is not just a celebration of the holidays. It's a celebration of our community's strength and resilience. We have come together to create a future we can all be proud of, one that honors our environment and supports each other." The crowd erupted in applause, and Elijah's heart swelled with pride. She glanced at Clara, who stood nearby, beaming with joy. As the evening continued, the community engaged in discussions, sharing ideas for future initiatives and celebrating their achievements.